more arrests and a US sanctions bill against banks.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, on DAB Digital Radio London, Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington DC, Bloomberg 1061 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
A very good morning from London. I'm Roger Hearing.
And I'm Naira Chahich. Good morning, everyone. It's coming up to 8:01 a.m. in London, 9:01 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Listeners, I just said to Roger, I had a big drama happen this morning. I want to tell you about it on air. And his response was, please do Aristophanes or Ibsen. Just so you know who we're dealing with.
Comedy or tragedy? You know what I'm talking about.
And I responded, it was comedy, so therefore Aristophanes.
Right.
Realised I didn't have my dress, Roger. I have a dress I have to wear on TV, so you don't have to worry about that on radio. Had to make a round trip back home to get it, leaving poor Tamara, the hair and makeup artist, with so little time to do my hair and makeup. She's only styled the front of my hair, not the back.
And we can hear the difference on air, I do think. But anyway, well, you could have borrowed my dress if I'd been in, but there we are. What can you do?
Oh, that's why I need you in the Docklands, Rog.
Safe in Surrey. Anyway, I suppose we should address one or two of the issues that might be bothering the rest of the world. And one of those, I guess, well, in a way, perhaps there's a bit of hope now. Vaccines seem to be on the agenda. Pfizer going for it, BioNTech certainly, and a Chinese company clearly pushing that ahead. We're not absolutely sure whether all these absolutely work, but it certainly seems to be boosting markets a bit.
I mean, yeah, Roger, how many times have we seen this, though, where you see some optimism around either a therapy or a vaccine or something else on the medical front in terms of COVID-19, and you get a little bit of risk-on come through in the market, and then, to be honest, it seems to quickly fade. So we'll see how long this lasts. We certainly have seen a little bit of resilience at the start of the month. We did end in the green in the end yesterday. 3 days of gains for the S&P 500, NASDAQ at a record. Always a discussion as to whether those tech stocks have gotten too far ahead of themselves at this point. But what seemed to also give a lift to equities yesterday, Roger, was the ISM manufacturing. And that sort of leads us neatly as well to the other data we're watching for today, which, of course, is the jobs data. And a question as to whether, even if we get positive surprises to the upside, how much longer that sort of positive bump is going to last as we go into the second half of the year and we get the concerns with some fiscal stimulus in particular being rolled back.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that is moving on. And interesting that in terms of various forms.
Welcome to SG Trader, the live trading channel where you can follow us for free, copy our trades and make some profit. If you're looking for our trading strategy, please go to company.co.uk, daytradingstrategy.html. We trade live our own funds in front of you and our customers so they can see how their investment growing. Let's go and see what we have right now for you today. Okay. What you can see, we show you on the one screen from our trading station. What we can see on the screen, you can see 5 pairs. Dollar yen, UK pound against US dollar, United States dollar against Canadian dollar, euro against United States dollar, and Bitcoin. Also, you can see on our ticker the pairs were already purchased and what holdings we have since yesterday or last week. On the left side, you can see our banners, promoters, and companies that we advertise.
what could happen in terms of getting some of them to come to the UK, which the British government now seems to be offering. A lot of holes in the legislation is the sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting to the data then, Roger. 4 days of gains is what we're seeing on the Stock 600, up 0.8%, 5 minutes into the equity market open. Across regional equity benchmarks, FTSE 100 up 0.5%. The CAC 40 is up 0.6%. The DAX higher by 0.9%. The IBEX leads gains up more than 1%. The FTSE MIB firmly in the green to the tune of 0.8%. US futures also printing positive. S&P E-minis and NASDAQ futures up at least 0.3%. Dow futures up 0.4%. We wonder whether we'll get any moves either way on the jobs data. There is an expectation for quite a strong print coming through. The 10-year yield is steady on a 67 handle. The 10-year bund yield goes nowhere at negative 39. The 10-year gilt yield also going nowhere on a 20 handle. So really, even though we're seeing a little bit of risk on come through in equity markets, it's not being reflected in bond markets. It wasn't either in the dollar earlier. However, we are seeing a little bit of dollar weakness come through now, and you're particularly seeing some of the commodity currencies outperform against the greenback right now. The Bloomberg Dollar Index slightly weaker for a third day. And then looking at oil, gaining yesterday with the drawdown in US stockpiles. It was flat earlier, but we are heading into positive territory now. WTI 40 spot 12 up 0.8%. Brent at 42.38 up 0.8%, Roger.
Right, let's have a look at what the stocks are to watch this morning. Bloomberg's Ewan Potts joins us from our London studio. Ewan, good morning. AB Foods, revenue definitely hurt by the pandemic. How's it playing?
Roger, yes, if you need a new dress, then Primark will be hoping that it's the shop you turn to. Now, the company's profits set to slump by about 2/3 this year as the fashion chain suffers from pandemic shutdowns. They reckon that adjusted operating profit will be as much as £350 million in the current year. That's down from over £900 million last year. Now, the problem for Primark is it doesn't have an online business. Pretty unusual that for a closed retailer, but they've always been rather proud of their retail, of their high street presence, but it's not been so good for them in 2020. Sales at other divisions, including sugar and food ingredients, offsetting some of the impact of its fashion business. But some good news from Primark that comparable sales are down 12% since stores reopened last month, which is better than expected. And the market certainly taking heart in this. Shares up 7.8%. It's actually the biggest gainer on the Stock 600 this morning.
And also, of course, another factor in the pandemic and its effect on economies generally, travel stocks, IAG, the Daily Telegraph saying that the UK quarantine issue is going to be there. What's going on in terms of the shares?
Yeah, quite a lot of green in the travel and leisure sector. As many as 75 countries could be on the first exemption list for UK travellers to quarantine. This is according to that Telegraph report you mentioned. Travel restrictions could be eased, as well as for EU destinations, for Turkey, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, and a host of other countries. Now, relaxation of the policy would mean that British travellers would not need to quarantine 14 days when coming back, and that could see a big boost in bookings for the likes of IAG, British Airways owner, and indeed TUI, Europe's biggest holiday company. IAG shares up 2.6% and TUI up 1.6% this morning.
Brilliant. Ewan, thanks very much. Ewan Potts there giving us the latest on stocks to watch.
Roger, let's get back to our top stories. And on the coronavirus front, an early trial of an experimental vaccine from Pfizer and BioNTech shows promise. It proved safe for patients and prompted them to produce antibodies against the virus. The experimental vaccine is now undergoing scientific peer review. Pfizer shares gained as much as 5.6% on Wednesday in New York, while BioNTech shares jumped by as much as 19% in Germany.
And amid concerns over the US buying up stocks of Gilead's remdesivir drug, some countries are seeking to reassure their residents. The UK says it's got enough of the medicine for every NHS patient who needs it. Switzerland also says it has supplies set aside for seriously ill patients. And media in Germany is reporting the country also has adequate supplies.
And when it comes to the path of the virus, the Federal Reserve is debating the same questions as the rest of us right now. Will it continue to spread? Will the economy reopen too soon? And as made clear in the minutes of June's meeting, the central bank's officials are not ready to commit to yield curve control. More from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
They did reveal an eagerness to provide more guidance in coming months on the future path of interest rates and asset purchases. The minutes from the June 10th Federal Open Market Committee meeting showed, quote, many participants remarked that as long as the committee's forward guidance remained credible on its own, it was not clear that there would be a need for the committee to reinforce its forward guidance with the adoption of a YCT policy. YCT refers to yield caps or targets, a strategy of limiting the yields on government bonds at specific maturities. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Meanwhile, today, the U.S. government issues its monthly employment report. Bloomberg's Michael McKee has the preview.
The June jobs data may have more of an impact on politics than markets. The spike in COVID cases around the country has states and cities rolling back reopening plans, raising questions about how many people hired back in June will be unemployed again in July. The unemployment rate, meanwhile, will suffer from classification errors, either continued confusion about who is or isn't on payrolls, or because they've fixed the errors and the data don't line up with previous months. Political candidates will jump on any numbers that might suggest how fast the labor market is recovering, while the Black Lives Matter protests put a spotlight on minority unemployment rates. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Now, turning to the latest with Hong Kong, the U.S. House of Representatives has passed a sanctions bill in response to Hong Kong's new security law. It targets banks that do business with Chinese officials involved in cracking down on pro-democracy protesters. Before coming into force, the bill still needs to be approved by the Senate before going to the President.
And here in the UK, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab's announced a new path to the UK for people living in Hong Kong, following the introduction of a new security law there. Under the UK plan, the status of the British national overseas passport holders will be upgraded to offer them a path to citizenship. BNO passports are held by 350,000 people in Hong Kong, with a further 2.5 million eligible for them.
Those are your top stories for the latest in global news. Here's Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning, Naira. Russian President Vladimir Putin has got a resounding endorsement of his bid to extend his 2-decade-long rule potentially to 2036. From Moscow, Bloomberg's Ilya Arkhipov has all those details.
Putin, who came to power in 2000, is already the longest-serving Russian leader since Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. With the referendum out of the way, the Russian president will face the task of navigating through one of the deepest recessions of his time in office. The clause was packaged together with populist amendments such as an effective constitutional ban on gay marriage or criticizing Moscow's role in the Second World War. In Moscow, Ilya Arkhipov, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The U.S. president's former national security advisor is standing by his book, highly critical of Donald Trump. It has sold more than 780,000 copies in its first few days of publication. John Bolton also told Bloomberg the president's response to allegations Russia offered bounties for killing American troops makes the U.S. vulnerable.
What it tells the Russians is we are in disarray. And ripe for this kind of provocation, not just in Afghanistan, but in many, many other places around the world.
The number of daily coronavirus cases in the U.S. has gone over 50,000 for the first time. Plans to reopen are being halted in areas including New York City and California. And Mexico has now overtaken Spain to have the world's 6th most deadly outbreak. In contrast, China has reported just 3 new cases, including 1 in Beijing and 2 imported cases elsewhere. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Thanks so much, Leanne. And coming up, we're going to be talking about the virus update to get how the vaccines are working, and indeed if they are. This is Bloomberg.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved in having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
Take the Bond Challenge. Use the free Interactive Brokers Bond Scanner to search their deep availability of U.S. government securities, 38,000 global corporate bonds, and 850,000 municipals. IBKR passes through the highest of all bids and lowest of all offers received at the electronic venues it accesses. We do not widen spreads, apply hidden fees, or mark up quotes. How many basis points does your current broker keep? Find out at ibkr.com/bonds.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Sherry Ann.
Joining us, Abebe Amro-Selassie, Director of the Africa Department at the IMF. How feasible is it to expect a continent like Africa, where there are so many people living in poverty, to effectively shut down their economies?
That has indeed been one of the challenges that policymakers have faced. Notably, the duration of containment measures has been weaker, and there's been quite a bit of difference between de jure legal measures versus what on the ground has actually happened. And of course, given that safety and the social safety nets remain much weaker in the region or non-existent in many countries, it has, of course, been very difficult for governments to strictly enforce containment measures. That's why we've seen the pressure to ease coming quite quickly before the number of case load increase has flattened. This said, I have to point also to some really very innovative and remarkably supportive new policy measures that countries have been undertaking. You've had countries like Togo, which have adopted very nimbly new approaches to provide social safety nets, for example, using existing mobile money systems to identify people with low balances, to do some transfers, and many other innovations across the region also.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash, and there's green across the screen for European markets this morning. The DAX leading gains up 1.2% at the moment. The CAC 40 higher by 0.9. The Stock 600 gaining 0.8%, and the FTSE higher by about 0.6% in London this morning. US futures also firmer. It follows a risk-on day in Asia as investors take heart from positive vaccine developments and better than expected US manufacturing data. In stock specifics, I'm keeping an eye on AB Foods. It's rallied 7% in London. This after third quarter grocery sales came in strong and profits were ahead of the mark. Primark did see sales down 12%, but still an improvement than what they had expected. Now, Boohoo is also down 2%. The UK retailer supposedly might have fueled the Leicester virus spread as it pushed through production of its online clothing. So something to watch there, according to an FT article at least. Now, that risk-on mood in the markets is boosting the Kiwi dollar and the Korean won in particular. Otherwise, G10 currencies fairly range-bound. The Bloomberg dollar spot index standing pat, the yen holding at 107.5, sterling at 124, the euro at 112. In bond markets, 10-year treasury yields at 67 basis points, benchmark bund yields at -40, 10-year gilt yields slightly weaker at 20 basis points this morning. Finally, in the commodity markets, we are seeing WTI above $40 a barrel, up 0.6%. This amid lower US stockpiles and Russia nearing OPEC Plus compliance. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Amid concerns over the US buying up stocks of Gilead's remdesivir drug, some countries are seeking to reassure their residents. The UK says it has enough of the medicine for every NHS patient who needs it. Switzerland also says it has supply set aside for seriously ill patients, and media in Germany is reporting the country has adequate supplies. Rising coronavirus infections in the US have forced New York City to halt the return of restaurant dining next week. Indoor dining was set to resume on Monday, but city officials say restaurants will have to continue using pavement space. State Governor Andrew Cuomo says it's a New York City measure only, and the rest of the state can now gradually reopen. And young Americans are partying hard and spreading COVID-19 quickly. From Arizona to Florida, young people are driving positive cases. The dropping age of the infected is becoming one of the most pressing problems in tackling the pandemic. Yesterday, local officials in the US continue to set curfews and close places where young people do gather. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garens. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, sticking with the virus, markets, equity markets at least, gaining today following positive coronavirus vaccine developments. This is an early trial of an experimental vaccine from Pfizer and BioNTech showing it's safe and prompted patients to produce antibodies. At the same time, European countries have reassured their residents of drug supplies amid concerns over the US buying up stocks of Gilead's remdesivir. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg Intelligence's senior pharmaceutical analyst, Sam Fazeli. Sam, great to have you with us. I was saying at the top of the show that we've been here before where we get some sort of good news on the vaccine front or the therapy front, and we see equity markets rally. Is it different this time with Pfizer and BioNTech?
Well, it's not different. It's just it keeps adding to the body of evidence that we're making progress. You know, we had remdesivir, then we had dexamethasone from the recovery trial in the UK. We had CanSino's data for Canadian-Chinese biotech that showed first human data, and now we have first human data from Pfizer-BioNTech. So it's all as it would be, small steps, which is what clinical trials do, small steps towards that final goal of getting a potential vaccine. But let's not kid ourselves here, because these are very early data, especially the one that just came out yesterday from Pfizer. There are a load of crucial information that's missing. And now it's not because they're covering it up, it's just they, for whatever reason, wanted to publish the data that they have and not wait for the rest of the information that's quite crucial in assessing the effectiveness of this vaccine.
Because, Sam, I mean, getting real on all this, the prospects of a vaccine being ready before early next year are still remote, aren't they?
Remote, I think it's all really dependent on what the regulators want to do. If we take what the Food and Drug Administration put out last week in terms of guidelines for what they require, then it is a hell of a mountain to climb. But these companies are going at, again, let's use the same phrase, at warp speed, right? It is possible to get something by the end of the year, but I think to be realistic, we should assume that it's going to be more likely for a meaningful approval to be first half of 2021, which ties in with what Anthony Fauci has been saying, and it ties in what folks on this Parliamentary Select Committee discussion yesterday in the UK were saying.
Yeah, we start a new month as well, Sam. There's a story on the Bloomberg talking about a flood of July vaccine data that's coming this month. Obviously, we've just discussed the early study with the Pfizer-BioNTech tie-up, but then also we're going to look ahead to results from Moderna, AstraZeneca. I'm just naming a couple there, but there's a lot on the docket. We've also got J&J starting the first stage of testing of its adenovirus-based vaccine in the latter half of July. What should we be looking out for this month?
Yes, hopefully more in-depth data. So certainly we're very excited ahead of the AstraZeneca data, because The Oxford team have an enormous amount of experience with the system that they're using. They have done, based on what they've said, 12 clinical trials previously with the same system for other viruses. So we're really keen to see that data. And of course, as these data come out, you start to be able to very, very tenuously compare the vaccines. I'm in the middle of doing that for the Pfizer, comparing it to the CanSino. Very difficult to do, but you can start to get a feel, especially from the side effect profile.
Yeah.
But we are a long way away from really knowing how effective these are.
All right, Sam, thanks so much. Sam Fazeli there, Bloomberg Intelligence's senior pharmaceutical analyst.
And Roger, we were talking about the positive note in equity markets because of the signs of a vaccine from Pfizer and BioNTech. 25 minutes into the equity market open in Europe, we're up 0.8% on the Stock 600. Fourth day of gains, US futures positive as well. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Most months, it's Jobs Friday on Wall Street as the Labor Department rolls out its monthly employment report. But with markets closed tomorrow in observance of Independence Day, today is Jobs Thursday. The Labor Department will have its June employment report before the market opens, as well as its weekly tally of first-time claims for jobless benefits. Both are expected to show improvement. 3 million jobs created in June, a 12.5% unemployment rate, and a decline in jobless claims to about 1.3 million. The jobs data will likely set the tone on Wall Street, but with coronavirus cases still on the upswing in many places, investors may remain cautious going into the long weekend. The Nasdaq led the major averages higher yesterday. It starts at a record high. Sears is exploring a sale of its home improvement business. Reuters reports the sale could raise at least $1 billion for the company that bought Sears out of bankruptcy. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
The best of Bloomberg Business Week every business day.
We've got a market sell-off that's spreading around the globe.
The Bloomberg Business Week podcast with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly.
Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day, Carol.
The day's breaking global business, finance, and tech news, along with smart analysis.
We know the Fed is going to be sure and steady.
The Bloomberg Business Week podcast.
A great scoop on the terminal.
Listen today on BloombergRadio.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
The market is unpredictable. BAM gives you certainty. In the face of volatility and illiquidity, BAM-insured municipal bonds deliver default protection, value preservation, and a durable AA rating from S&P. BAM's insurance protects against everything that causes a default, including natural disasters, financial fraud, pension issues, and economic disruption, like the one we're experiencing right now. BAM. Build America Mutual. Ask your broker about BAM-insured municipal bonds.
Imagine.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday morning by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to a computer or to someone called Colin, or Priya, or Lewis, or Zoe, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor gatherings? Wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Participate in events like these infrequently. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Roger, 30 minutes into the equity market open in Europe. Green on the screen for a fourth day. The Stock 600 up 0.8%. And all this seems to be down to some optimism because of an early study on vaccines. FTSE 100 up 0.6%. The CAC 40 higher by almost 1%. The DAX higher by 1.3%. IBEX leads up 1.7%. The FTSE MIB up 1.3%. 3 days of gains for the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq at a record, not putting a stop to the rally futures indicate right now. S&P E-minis up 0.3%. Nasdaq futures higher by the same. Dow futures higher by 0.4%. Not seeing a lot of movement in the 10-year yield. That's dead steady on a 67 handle. The 2-year yield is something to focus on, though, near a record low at 16 basis points. Of course, we heard from the Fed yesterday. They're preferring specific forward guidance as opposed to yield curve control, according to the minutes. The 10-year bund yield is steady at -40. 10-year gilt yield at 20 basis points, going nowhere. Touch of dollar weakness coming through with commodity currencies outperforming. And speaking of commodities themselves, oil gained on a stockpile drawdown yesterday. WTI and Brent on the front foot again after treading water through the Asian session. WTI at 40.12 up 0.8%. Brent at 42.37 up 0.8%. Roger.
Right, let's go on to some of today's top stories. Now, an early trial of an experimental vaccine from Pfizer and BioNTech shows promise. It's proved safe for patients and prompted them to produce antibodies against the virus. The vaccine is now undergoing scientific peer review. Pfizer shares gained as much as 5.6% on Wednesday in New York, while BioNTech shares jumped by as much as 19% in Germany.
In the US, the Federal Reserve is still wary of committing to yield curve control. Policymakers had questions about its benefits when they met last month, but the minutes of the meeting reveal an eagerness to provide more explicit forward guidance. Fed officials see the US economy needing support for some time to come.
Now, turning to the latest on Hong Kong, the US House of Representatives has passed a sanctions bill in response to Hong Kong's new security law. It targets banks that do business with Chinese officials involved in cracking down on pro-democracy protesters. Before coming into force, the bill still needs to be approved by the Senate before it goes to the President.
And here in the UK, the Foreign Secretary has announced the British government will help people in Hong Kong get British citizenship following dozens of arrests under new security laws. Dominic Raab says the new laws a flagrant assault on people's rights.
The enactment of this legislation imposed by the authorities in Beijing on the people of Hong Kong constitutes a clear and serious breach of the joint declaration.
Under the UK plan, the status of British national overseas passport holders will be upgraded to offer them a path to citizenship. BNO passports are held by 350,000 people in Hong Kong, with a further 2.5 million eligible for them. And just some headlines crossing the Bloomberg as well in the past couple of minutes. China repeating that Hong Kong affairs are an internal matter, and China strongly condemning the UK BNO offer to Hong Kongers. Roger.
Right, let's get the latest now in global news with Leanne Gerrits. And Leanne, you begin with Russia.
Indeed, Roger. President Vladimir Putin has won a bid to extend his 2-decade rule. In a national referendum, the Kremlin got a change to term limit rules. It would allow Putin to stay in power potentially until 2036. Preliminary results show 78% voted in favour. The move comes despite Putin's approval ratings being in near historic lows. Now, the number of daily coronavirus cases in the U.S. has gone over 50,000 for the first time, and President Donald Trump has backed wearing a mask, but he doesn't think they should be required. Previously, the president had mocked his Democratic challenger Joe Biden for wearing a mask when there is nobody around. His comments to Fox TV come a day after the Surgeon General urged Americans to wear face coverings.
I'm all for masks. I think masks are good. I would wear, if I were in a group of people and I was close.
You would wear one?
Oh, I would. Oh, I have. I mean, people have seen me wearing one. I have no problem with that. I think, and if people feel good about it, they should do it.
In Japan, Tokyo has reported over 100 new coronavirus cases this morning, the most since early May. Infections are continuing to increase as the capital reopens its economy. Authorities are remaining calm, however, as the new cases are predominantly impacting younger people in their 20s and 30s who are less likely to require hospitalization. And London restaurants, bars and hotels start to reopen this weekend after a 3-month lockdown, and Bloomberg's Richard Vine says it may be a good time to try for hotspots that are normally full.
There are tables going next week at the Wolseley, and the Hume Indian cafe chain is taking dinner bookings for the first time. Before, you could spend an hour lined up outside. Chefs are watching nervously to see if people are ready to come out, though the signs are good. More than 44,000 have booked tables since the government last week announced easing the lockdown, and bars are expecting a bonanza. It's pubs that many Londoners have missed most. In London, Richard Vines, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, I love this story, but I'm confused. Surely it would be harder to get places because you're having to book in advance. There's going to be fewer places to sit because of social distancing. Why would it be easier to get into these hotspots?
I think it's because less people are actually heading out now. So instead of queuing, we've got more distancing measures in place. So people are now thinking more about what they're doing. Because, you know, a lot of these restaurants, like I've been to Dishoom, it's lovely, but I did it on the spur of the moment. And then you just have to stand in the queue.
Ooh. Editorialising from Naira Chahid.
Well, Leanne said lovely, so I had to provide the balance, didn't I, Rog?
Well, maybe. Listen, I've managed to achieve getting a lunchtime booking at a very good restaurant in Dorset when I go down there at the weekend to see my mother, who I haven't seen for 4 months, and I've managed to get the very last table. And it's probably going to be down on the beach, might even be in the sea, the way things are going.
Oh, my gosh.
But we've
lovely.
done it. Yes, I hope so. Anyway, life is going to resume. I think the police are a bit concerned there might be a riot on Saturday night. Certainly won't be coming from me and my mum, but you never know.
I've never been able to get into Bow. Can I get into Bow, do you think? No? Any hope there?
Maybe contact Richard Vines. He might be able to help you. That's our food critic. And also, like I did say earlier, it's a full moon on Saturday, and we know that Naira believes in that too. So what's going to happen on Saturday
Oh, my gosh, it's going to be carnage.
Yes, we're all going to get quite hairy in various ways. And howl. Anyway, let's talk about the howls that are coming from the UK retail sector, because frankly they are very much in pain. Primark's revenue plunged 75% in its fiscal third quarter. The retailer suffered from not having an online store amid the virus pandemic, because that seems to be the way in which people are moving in terms of their purchasing. Comes as 6,000 jobs were removed from the UK high street just yesterday, with cuts at Harrods and Arcadia. That said, the update did, however, show Primark sales bounce back quickly after their stores reopened. Well, let's get a bit more perspective on this from Bloomberg Intelligence retail analyst Charles Allen. Charles, thanks for being with us. Just take us through those Primark figures. Does it suggest that actually, yes, it was bad, but there is hope?
Yeah, I mean, quite clearly. I think the number to really look at is that the same-store sales were down 12% as stores opened in the sort of last 7 weeks of the period they reported. In April, they said that they would be pleased with a minus 20% over roughly that sort of period. So the minus 12%
12%, which isn't great, but it is exceeded what they were looking at. And in the very last week of the period, they said that sales in the UK, in England and Ireland, were ahead of last year. So, we do see the demand is really there. And I think the point about Primark is that a lot of the stores are in big city centres, which still are suffering from a lack of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeffrey's called the third quarter for AB Foods very reassuring. You could also argue, though, that, of course, the store reliance for Primark as opposed to being online is perhaps something that could provide a bit of a headwind, because you sort of hinted there at the shopping on the high street, Charles. What about UK retailers in general? Is there a lot of suffering ahead for the second half?
Well, yeah, I think that it's quite clear that a lot of stores are probably going to close permanently, and I think there are a couple of points around that. One is that actually reopening a store is potentially an extremely expensive thing to do, particularly if you've had a success of your online business, because the people you employ go from being paid on the furlough scheme, the government's job retention scheme, to coming back onto your payroll. But if the amount of traffic in the stores is down very significantly, then almost all your stores are probably going to be moving into loss making. And I think that's why we're seeing some of the things that are happening now. People are just sort of saying, well, it looks as if our business, instead of being, say 15% online, is going to be 45% online, or even 60% online. And we just can't afford the stores anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to sustain, isn't it? Charles, thanks so much. That was Charles Allen, Bloomberg Intelligence retail analyst, talking about what's been going on the high street.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom or dad but don't know where to start? Hi, I'm Joan London with A Place for Mom. Nobody knows your parent or loved one better than you, and nobody knows senior living better than the experts at A Place for Mom. It's a free service, and we've helped thousands of families find the right place for their mom or dad. There's a place for answers, A Place for Mom. Call today.
Call A Place for Mom at 1-800-391-1755. That's 1-800-391-1755.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
NJIT.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Ever wondered how people's postcode lottery works? Easy. Your postcode is your ticket. And every weekday it gives you the chance to win £1,000 or £30,000 every weekend. And every month players in your postcode could win a share of £3 million. Join in at postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 23rd of July to play in the August draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Listening has always taught us a lot at Honda. And lately, we've been listening to your thumbs. Because thumbs can do everything now. The world is at their thumb tips. So now, the My Honda Plus app lets the thumb take control of your car too. Even when you're not inside the new Honda E, your thumb can find where you parked, set the temperature before you get in, check how much the battery is charged, and schedule charging for when electricity is cheapest. The new Honda E and My Honda Plus app. Oh, a thumbs up. Honda, the power of dreams.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
There's lots to discover when you join Tesco Mobile, like the incredible iPhone SE with its Retina HD display. Perfect for streaming on the go for just $19.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. But hurry, offer ends 12th of July. Visit us in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 12th of the 7th 20 was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status, 99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, Hilton Knowles on the unrest that followed a police killing in his Brooklyn neighborhood more than 50 years ago.
Standing by my mother's living room window, I tried tentatively to ask her why our world was burning. She gave me a forbidding look. Boy, be quiet so you can survive, her eyes seemed to say.
Hilton Knowles on the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races. We're all guilty of spending too much time on social media. Why not add something genuinely useful to your feed with TuneIn? Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the best stuff happening around the app. You might just discover your next audio obsession.
Use 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg QuickTake. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash, and we're about 47 minutes into the European trading day with green across the screen. The DAX leading gains currently up 1.7%, the CAC 40 up 1.4%, the Stock 600 up 1.1%, and the FTSE higher by 0.9% this morning in London. US futures also firmly in the green. If we take a look at some of the currency markets this morning, we are seeing the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index weaker, moving near its 1 week low at the moment. G10 currencies otherwise fairly range bound, with the yen currently at 107.5, sterling above 125 now, a bit bid. Similarly so for the euro, gaining 0.3 to 112 this morning. We are seeing the Kiwi dollar up 0.5%, really the main beneficiary of that risk on tone in the markets. The Korean won also snapping 2 days of losses, gaining 0.3%. Gold futures are extending their decline from an 8-year high, currently down trading around $1,770 a troy ounce. Finally, WTI up more than 1%, well above $40 a barrel now. This amid lower US stockpiles and Russia saying they're near OPEC plus compliance. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Len Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. The US House has passed a sanctions bill in response to Hong Kong's new security law. It targets banks that do business with Chinese officials involved in cracking down on pro-democracy protesters. Before coming into force, the bill still needs to be approved by the Senate, then the President. The number of daily coronavirus cases in the US has topped 50,000 for the first time. Plans to reopen are being halted in areas including New York City and California. Mexico has now overtaken Spain to have the world's sixth most deadly outbreak. According to official tallies, it now has over 28,000 deaths. And in Wales, some pubs, bars and cafes and restaurants will be able to reopen outdoors from the 13th of July, but indoor services will remain closed for now despite industry pressure. Wales is the only part of the United Kingdom without a restart date for indoor hospitality. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
You know, Leanne, I was looking at a tweet from a friend of mine earlier who's a journalist in Devon, and she said a few Devon pubs are not opening this weekend as they think it will be carnage on July 4th, so they're waiting until midweek to open.
Do you know what? I actually was just thinking about this myself earlier because we've been talking about this story this morning, and I was thinking, what a day. 4th of July, they've almost touted it as Independence Day here. We know it is over in this state, and it's like us to get all our independence back, but we still have to remember that cases are surging in different parts of the world, so we do need to be a little bit careful. We can't all just get this massive alcohol injection and go off the rails.
Well, you say we can't, but they will. I mean, they absolutely will. I mean, Devon pubs generally are pretty carnageous anyway, but I think you're going to... It's going to be madness. I think people don't care. Or if they do care, well, perhaps they don't know. Who knows? But it's going to be interesting. Are you going to be celebrating, Naira?
Do you know what, Rog? I'm not. I think I said this before on the show. I've got some days off mid-July, and I just don't want to get sick before that. And also, I'm sorry, but I've gotten into a very, very calm rhythm through lockdown that I'm quite liking. I don't really miss the old life.
A lot of people are saying that now, aren't they? A lot of people are saying they actually don't want to go back to the pressures and the FOMO, the fear of missing out that we all had before lockdown.
No, I've got FOGO, fear of going out.
Exactly. I think a lot of people are feeling like that because they built a little nest at home and they seem to enjoy time getting to know themselves. But I'm going out.
Oh, all right, Leanne. Well, we may or may not see you on Monday morning then. Leanne Gerrans with the World News. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the markets then and to our guest for the rest of the hour. Ian Steely, International CIO for Fixed Income at JP Morgan Asset Management, joins us down the line. Ian, we've been having quite a light-hearted conversation about pubs reopening, but on a serious note, I mean, a lot of investors like yourself are looking at the high-frequency data, more so sort of restaurant bookings, to see how risk-on they should be right now in terms of the recovery for the second half. What does that kind of data tell you in terms of how you want to be positioning around risk?
I think that's the big question at the moment, and the issue, as we all know, is that some of those mobility data in the US, particularly in the southern states, are starting to roll over a little bit, just on the back of this pickup in virus counts and concerns that whether it's a second wave or just a continuation of the first wave, is that effectively we are seeing the number of cases go up, and it's going to start to mean that large parts of the US economy are going to go back into maybe not full lockdown, but at least a reduced openness. And I think that is concerning people, because obviously the market's pricing in a lot of good news. We've got equities continuing to march higher, and if we do get a bit of a rollover and maybe some of those expectations for the second half of the year aren't quite as good, you could see a bit of a wobble in risk.
But at the same time, is it, Ian, do you think the market's perhaps looking beyond that, just saying what we know, there are things we can't know about, which essentially is the virus risk, and things that we can, which is the hard data we've got to hold on to so far, and on that basis, we're happy to take a bit of risk to try and see if we can make ourselves in some form of recovery, almost whatever the virus issue is?
I think that's a good point. I think actually what people are thinking about is, well, we've seen this before. Obviously, the northeastern states in the US went through this and came out the other side, and we've got this remarkable backstop from central banks and governments. So if I sell my risk now, will I be able to buy it back later, or will I just be paying a higher price for it? I think that's a very valid question, and out. I think that's one of the things that's going on in the markets at the moment.
Interesting. It does perhaps, though, mean as well that to a certain extent that combined with all the central bank liquidity, it's sort of been a tide that's lifted all boats. So you've assigned an 80% probability of above trend growth over the coming 3 to 6 months, Ian. What does that mean in terms of what you're doing around risk and perhaps sort of going up the risk curve? What are you doing in credit, for example?
So we're definitely following what the central banks are doing. So very happy to buy investment-grade credit in line with the Fed and the European Central Bank. And then when it comes to things like high-yield credit, emerging markets, we think there are opportunities out there. The valuations still look pretty attractive, particularly relative to other parts of the market. But I think we do need to be selective. You do need to be aware. Obviously, the high-yield default rate has pushed up to the highest that we've seen in a decade or so. So it's not completely free sailing in that part of the credit market. But to say, we do think there are opportunities, and we think if you pick the right companies, there's some decent money to be made.
Now, we heard from the FOMC minutes that the Fed isn't that keen on yield curve control at the moment, or yield curve targets perhaps as an option. I mean, in terms of sovereign bonds, where do you see that going if yield curve control isn't really in fashion, perhaps?
I really struggle to see sovereign yields moving remarkably higher in this environment, because we've still got a pretty dire economic outlook. Although we expect a big bounce through the second half, but obviously that's on the back of a very poor first half of the year. And really, what we're seeing at the moment is unlikely to promote inflation anytime soon. And with still the central bank support, you feel that government yields are to some extent capped. And actually what we believe is that they're a pretty good diversifier. So if you're going to buy some of the risk markets, look at some of the areas like high yield within the fixed income space, it's probably worth having some longer dated US treasuries as a bit of a barbell effect, so that if actually some of the second wave does come back and the case counts go up and risk markets take a bit of a backward step, then actually the likelihood is that those treasury yields will go lower and they can at least offer you some capital return to offset the risk markets. I think it probably makes sense at the moment to have a bit of a barbell.
That totally makes sense, Ian, but yet you think curve steepeners look attractive?
I think what you're seeing here is that over the longer term, you should see some structural moves towards curve steepness. So, yes, the Federal Reserve's not going to be, possibly yield curve control doesn't look like it's the first option they're going to have, but I still think some form of forward guidance, some form of targeting around economic outcomes is likely to mean that the front end will be anchored, and then over time you are likely to see steeper curves. So I do still think it makes sense to own a bit of duration at the moment to ensure, I say, against the risk assets you own on the other side.
And what about, relative value in terms of rates? How are you looking at that?
So we would look at parts of the market where we actually believe that yields could go lower if you did see a bit risk-off move. So US Treasuries, obviously the 10-year up around 70 basis points. Actually Australia we like around about 90 basis points. We think markets like those where if you did see weakness you could see lower yields. I do struggle to buy things like German bonds. I've said it for a long time. Maybe not always been right, but I do still struggle to buy German bonds at negative 40. And to be honest, I don't see the Bank of England going into negative rates. So gilt yields at 15 to 20 basis points in the 10-year part of the curve, that looks like an area that you'd probably want to be underweight.
Interesting. Ian Steely, International CIO for Fixed Income at JP Morgan Asset Management. Great to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining. We're almost an hour into the equity market open here, Roger, and we've been talking about the slightly risk-off tone that we're seeing in equity markets based on optimism around a vaccine. The Stock 600 is extending gains, up 1.2% right now. Biggest gain this week, and we're on a fourth day of gains, and after a three-day rally, and the Nasdaq had a record, S&P E-minis printing positive as well.
And coming up, Anna Edwards and Matt Miller back on Daybreak Europe. But again, they're going to be speaking to David Bloom, Global Head of FX Strategy at HSBC, and talking about where things go at the moment in that department. And certainly the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, the dollar 0.2% weaker as we speak. This is Bloomberg.
Pressure on profits? Call GEP.
At Harford's, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages.
or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
What would the world be like if we listened more? At Honda, our ears are always open to new ideas. Oh, there's one now, knocking on our eardrum. What's that? What if we made a car with cameras instead of wing mirrors? A robot mower that knows when it's time to cut the grass. A self-balancing motorcycle. And what if by 2022, all of our mainstream cars were hybrid or electric? Huh. Great idea. Thanks, ears. Honda. The power of dreams.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio.
And from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. You're listening to Daybreak Europe on London DAB Digital Radio. It is a gorgeous day here. As you know, I have this incredible view of the Brandenburg Gate. And it's just, blue skies and sun, but thankfully, it's only about 70 degrees. I don't know what that is in Celsius.
In our money. Well, that is very nice for you. It is not quite so warm here, and no blue skies, I can report. In this bit of London anyway, the bit of London I'm currently in, no blue skies. We've had, I think, our fair share of blue skies, though, in recent months, but not just recently. And we just heard in the weather update that apparently it's going to rain later, so there we are. Things we have to look forward to. Let's get to the data check, though, Matt, and we've got European
equity markets. It's like a Friday today.
Taking a sunny view. It is in a sense, isn't it? Because the US is operating a shortened week, and so with that comes reduced volumes, reduced market interest, perhaps from global players on a Friday. But we'll still be here, doing our thing on a Friday. But we've got stocks here in Europe on the up by 1.2% this morning. The FTSE 100 up by just shy of 1%. The CAC 40 up 1.6%. The Xetra DAX up by nearly 2%, and the IBEX and FTSE MIB in Spain and Italy, both of those up by more than 2%. So we are seeing some real strength, in particular at the periphery, in particular in those sort of riskier ends of the equity spectrum, I suppose. US futures also pointing higher, and a lot of this goes back to the US session yesterday. We had some positive data surprises on US growth or US manufacturing and sentiment there, but perhaps more importantly, some positive news around vaccines, or one in particular from Pfizer and another player, and that vaccine was shown to be safe and also produce an antibody response. So as a result of that, we saw some gains on Wall Street, and that spread through Asia and is also permeating into the European session as well. So we are making some decent gains here, even though other virus news, in particular around the strength of the outbreak in the US, is still very gloomy and makes for fairly gloomy reading. Let's just get a couple of other assets checked.
No,
and we've got oil prices up by 1.4%, and the dollar is in retreat, as you would expect when you see this risk on move. Matt, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say there's so many down arrow stories about. I every day click VR US Go on the Bloomberg just to get the latest, and there's so many down arrow stories on not only the spread of the virus. They finally have reached 50,000 a day in the U.S. Fauci says it could go to 100,000 a day if they don't check their behavior. And meanwhile, the kids are still out, at ragers all night and spreading it around so much that the average age of a person infected with the coronavirus in the U.S. has drastically fallen from, people in their 60s down to people in their 30s or even 20s.
It does seem as if for months a lot of the news flow has been dire and has been very depressing. But then when you start to see just the chink, just the slightest chink of light coming through in terms of the vaccination story, that is enough to excite people, it would seem. Plus, even when things are dire, it gets that instinct, it sort of triggers that instinct on Wall Street, doesn't it? And with investors that, okay, things are really bad, therefore, what are central banks going to do? What are governments going to do to help us out?
Very, very true. And as a result, equities are on a tear. Now, equities are, according to our next guest, a much bigger beneficiary of the current news cycle as well as the stimulus, etc., than currencies or other assets. Let's bring in David Bloom. He's a global head of FX strategy at HSBC. And David, you're making a point that everyone's watching equities. Equities are what everybody's playing. A lot of people are saying it's the only game in town. What does that do to the currency world that you watch so closely?
Well, you're right. I mean, you say you look at one screen, and I look at WEIF, which is basically the equity future, and I look at it every morning before I do the morning meeting. And if the S&P's up, I say it's risk on. The dollar's going to be down, and your Mexicos and your rands and your are going to, and your Aussies and your Kiwis are going to rally, and your Swissies and your yens aren't. You wake up one morning, you look WEIF, you see the equity market down, and boom, it's the reverse. So basically, we're taking clues from others. Nobody takes a clue from FX at the moment.
Although that's interesting, but the dollar has been a haven, hasn't it, through a lot of the tension, and so yes, we're all taking clues, aren't we, from the health crisis? I guess that's the root cause of everything we're talking about at the moment, David. So, where do you see the dollar heading then through all of this? Because are you just hanging on every word of Fauci in the US, every bit of news around vaccinations? Is that what's driving sentiment on the dollar?
No, I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, it's risk on, risk off, and sometimes it's virus on, virus off, VOVO. So it depends. It depends what's going on. But basically, it also depends on what central banks are doing, and they are adding massive amounts of liquidity to the system, which they're doing all the time. And we're seeing another fiscal package by the US, and actually can't even keep count of all of it. So basically, we're taking direction from growth, but the numbers, like for example, we're getting non-farm payrolls today. We don't know what they mean at the moment. So it's very difficult to get a trended move in foreign exchange. So we started the year very bullish the dollar, and that's kind of worked out for us for the wrong reasons. But when you buy the dollar, you get a free insurance policy against all bad things. And now we've got the dollar like in the middle of the pack. We've got Aussie and Kiwi and NOK in stock doing well against the dollar. We've got Euro and Sterling and CAD doing badly against the dollar. So the dollar's gone from basically the king of the pile to the middle of the pack.
I'm the least sophisticated FX analyst, but when I see the Fed buying so much in terms of assets, blowing up the balance sheet, it looks like to me that they're printing money, and I would think as a result that money should be worth less. Is that really the case in terms of these big fiat currencies like the dollar?
Well, if we were arguing that the U.S. was doing this all by itself and sitting there, Johnny no mates, then absolutely the dollar would be getting smashed. But actually, if you look at central bank asset purchases as a percentage of GDP, by September this year, the ECB will be more than the U.S. and the UK will be more than the ECB. So if you project it out, everyone's at it. And if everyone's at it, currencies are a relative concept. They're not an absolute concept. They're relative. You can sell an equity, never buy another one. You can sell a bond and never buy another one. But when you sell one currency, you have to buy another one. And so that is the big difference between foreign exchange and other asset classes. It's not only what you are doing, it's what the other side is doing as well.
Interesting. And I take the point that you don't think the action is in FX right now. What changes that, David? Is there anything that changes that, do you think?
Well, what can change that? I mean, and a good example of, Brazil cut interest rates when its currency was down 25%. We've never seen that before because normally you'd be worried about the currency, whereas here you don't worry about the currency. So we would need a normalized world where world trade matters again, where if your currency went down, that helped your exports, whereas at the moment there's no net trade, there's no impact. If your currency moves, is it inflationary? No, not at all, because countries are in lockdown. So we need a normalized world before FX really takes the mantle back again.
When we get back there, David, is there, is one central bank or is one government doing more to hurt its currency than others? I mean, in this relative world, who's printing too much money and who's holding value for their currency?
Yeah, so then you'd go to the emerging market space and have to watch the more vulnerable ones, which we think are South Africa and Brazil, and those are the ones that have had to cut interest rates aggressively and also push fiscal policy, whether they can really afford it or not, because you've got to help people. So I'm not saying their policy actions are wrong. It's just that the implication of their policy actions will be very bad for their currencies. The countries we like are the ones that have fiscal firepower, that even if they doubled their debt to GDP ratio like New Zealand, it'd get a 45%. I mean, how do you get to the airport? Wouldn't start from here is the old joke. Well, if you had a crisis, New Zealand, Australia, Sweden, Norway, great place to start. And so that's why we like them, because they've got fiscal firepower without resorting to strange and wonderful rinky-dinkies from their central banks.
That's the new name. That's what we call them from now on, David.
It was coined by John Maynard Keynes in the...
Johnny No-Mates.
And I could just imagine Andrew Bailey or Jay Powell saying that is exactly what they're doing. David, thank you very much. David Bloom, Global Head of FX Strategy at HSBC. Always wakes me up to have a good chat with David.
Let's get over to Caroline Hepburn now for your global news headlines. Caroline?
Good morning, Matt and Anna. Now, in the UK, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab has announced a new path to citizenship in Britain for almost 3 million people living in Hong Kong with British national overseas passports and their dependents. It follows the introduction of a new security law by Beijing, which has been swiftly enforced in Hong Kong. In the House of Commons yesterday, Boris Johnson condemned the legislation by China.
The enactment and imposition of this national security law constitutes a clear and serious breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration. It violates Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy and is in direct conflict with Hong Kong basic law.
Russian President Vladimir Putin received a resounding endorsement of his bid to extend his 2-decade-long rule potentially to 2036, despite sagging approval ratings from Moscow. Bloomberg's Ilya Arkhipov has all the details.
Putin, who came to power in 2000, is already the longest-serving Russian leader since Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. With the referendum out of the way, the Russian president will face the task of navigating through one of the deepest recessions of his time in office. The clause was packaged together with populist amendments such as an effective constitutional ban on gay marriage or criticizing Moscow's role in the Second World War. In Moscow, Ilya Arkhipov, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
The US president's former national security advisor is standing by his book, highly critical of Donald Trump. It has sold more than 780,000 copies in its first few days of publication. John Bolton told Bloomberg that the president's response to allegations that Russia offered bounties for killing American troops makes the US vulnerable.
What it tells the Russians is we are in disarray. And ripe for this kind of provocation, not just in Afghanistan, but in many, many other places around the world.
Finally, in terms of coronavirus, the number of daily cases in the US has topped 50,000 for the first time. Plans to reopen are being halted in areas including New York City and California. Meanwhile, the French health minister, Olivier Véran, says that all indicators are showing that the coronavirus is under control in mainland France. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepke. This is Bloomberg. Matt, Anna.
Caroline, thank you very much. Now with your morning sports news, here's Colin Besley.
West Ham are 3 points above the Premier League's relegation zone this morning after beating Chelsea. They scored a dramatic last-minute winner to grab victory in last night's top-flight derby 3-2. Leicester, in third, continued their stuttering restart with a 2-1 defeat at Everton. Arsenal are up to 7th, having thrashed bottom side Norwich 4-0. Bournemouth's hopes of beating the drop were dealt a blow in losing 4-1 to Newcastle. This evening, Liverpool play in the top flight for the first time as champions, taking on former title holders Manchester City. That game's after Tottenham's trip to Sheffield United. And England's Tyrrell Hatton will be hoping for another strong showing as the latest USPGA Tour golf event gets underway later. He goes into the tournament in Detroit following a win in the Arnold Palmer Invitational and was tied for third in South Carolina. American Chad Campbell was one of a number of competitors to withdraw from the event due to coronavirus.
All right, well, we've got some big guests coming up. Also, we're going to talk about Boris Johnson making a bold move on Hong Kong. The government announced yesterday it's going to allow almost 3 million Hong Kong citizens to move to the UK. Well, that's not really the case. It's going to give a path to citizenship to a potential upper limit of 3 million. Really, only 250,000 are going to be able to grab it right away. But we're going to talk about all the details and fill you in with Bloomberg Opinions. Therese Raphael. This is Bloomberg.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents BSO at Home. While you stay inside, enjoy a curated collection of archived concerts and behind-the-scenes stories from BSO musicians. BSO Homeschool provides lessons for music lovers of all ages. New performances and messages from musicians are added regularly. Enjoy these selections and much more at bso.org/at-home.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Emily Chang.
With economies opening worldwide, consumers are venturing out of their homes once again to shop in store, though much of it still happening, of course, online. I recently spoke with the CEO of Converse, Scott Uzzell, about demand in the pandemic and how the brand is stepping up to support the Black community. Take a listen.
Demand and consumers engaged with our brands. I can show you many different signals around the world that are as strong or stronger than they were prior to COVID-19. The real test will be over time when everything's open. So all of our partners are open, all of our retail stores are open. And it's been for quite some time when consumers are kind of being out of shelter. That'll give us a real sense for if there's been any shifts in demand. But I will tell you this, we were strong going into COVID-19, and we're feeling really good about the signals that we've seen thus far when we've opened our markets back up.
Now, we're also in the middle of an urgent social crisis with the new momentum behind the Black Lives Matter movement. And as one of the too few African-American CEOs in this country, how have you been experiencing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first of all, as you think about our brand, we like to think of our brand as it's really a democratic brand, a brand of all people.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and at Bloomberg QuickTake. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Danny Berger with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. We're looking at broad gains across equity markets. European stocks advancing for a fourth consecutive day of gains, which would be the longest streak since the end of May. At the moment, they're advancing more than 1%. It looks like some of the high beta cyclical sectors are what's leading markets today. So we're looking at things like banks, travel, autos, all doing better. Likewise, we're seeing the DAX up nearly 2% today. FTSE 100 not doing as well, but still some strong gains here, up about 0.9%. Likewise, U.S. futures also trading higher here, up 0.6%. But markets still bracing for the June employment report, which is expected to be a blockbuster of a report. Over 3 million jobs expected to be added. Elsewhere in FX, the dollar down 0.2%. So we're seeing the pound and the euro against the dollar rallying by more than 0.2%. Sterling right now trading at 1.25 versus the dollar. Kiwi dollar also higher today by about 0.5%. So we're seeing some more of those, again, cyclical assets do better today. In bond land, we're looking at UK yields falling. Interestingly, the 30-year yield in the UK now trading at 65 basis points. It's less than 1 basis point away from yielding less than Japanese debt, which would be a historic milestone. US 10-year stuck in a range, trading at about 67 basis point. BTPs, on the other hand, yields there falling. They're the lowest since March, with the increased demand at debt sales. Now, quickly, commodities, oil up by more than 1%. We're looking at crude trading at more than $40 a barrel, Brent more than $42 a barrel, and in copper, it's trading at over $6,100 a ton, almost erasing losses year to date. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Caroline Hepker on more what's going on around the world. Caroline.
Thanks so much, Danny. Amid concerns over the US buying up stocks of Gilead's remdesivir drug, some countries are seeking to reassure their residents. The UK says that it has enough of the medicine for every NHS patient who needs it, remdesivir being one of 2 drugs shown to treat COVID-19. Switzerland also says that it has supplies set aside for seriously ill patients, and media in Germany is reporting that the country has adequate supplies. Meanwhile, rising coronavirus infections in the US have forced New York City to halt the return of restaurant dining next week. Indoor dining was set to resume on Monday, but city officials say that restaurants will have to continue using pavement space instead. The state governor, Andrew Cuomo, says that it's a New York City measure only and the rest of the state can gradually reopen. And in Wales, some pubs, bars, cafes and restaurants will be able to reopen outdoors from the 13th of July, but indoor services will remain closed for now, despite industry pressure. Wales is the only part of the United Kingdom without a restart date for indoor hospitality. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg QuickTake, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepker. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It is 9:20 in the city. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined today by opinion columnist Therese Raphael, who's writing about the UK's offer of a path to citizenship for many people in Hong Kong. Therese, very good morning to you. Let's start with the scale and scope of this, because it does seem as if it could be quite substantial, at least from a Hong Kong perspective. There are a limited number of people who have these BNO passports right now, but 3 million could be eligible. Then you add in their dependents. That's out of a population of, 7.5 million. This has the potential to be quite substantial from a Hong Kong perspective, I suppose.
Yes, it does. It's a big extension to the original offer that the government had made when the new Chinese security law was announced. They originally spoke of extending the right to stay in Britain for the BNO holders, but this is a whole other ballgame, and we could see from the Chinese reaction this morning that they're very unhappy about it. I mean, in many ways, it rights a historic wrong. I was going back to Chris Patton's book on his period as the last governor, where he talks about how Hong Kongers were sort of left with a second-class document that only allowed them, access to British consular protection, a bit of easier travel, but nothing like, the rights given to remaining residents of other British colonies. And, that's long been thought to have been a pretty big mistake on the part of Britain. Boris Johnson is now seeking to rectify it, and also to, draw really a line in the sand over, on China. And I think it's going to have ramifications for a whole range of other policies, including trade, Huawei, and the direction of really post-Brexit foreign policy.
Isn't it largely symbolic, though, Therese? I mean, Hong Kong is very far away. It's a 12-hour flight if you get a direct one, and it's not just a matter of bureaucratic, allowance. You also need money to move to a foreign country. Like, practically, it's a big deal. Probably not a lot of people are going to take them up on it.
It's hard to say. I mean, there was a survey last year, I think in October, where I think done by Hong Kong University, which said that like 40% of those surveyed said they would consider emigrating. I mean, that's an enormous sort of, that's an enormous share of people. And, if you feel that your freedom has been, so seriously curtailed that your quality of life is no longer acceptable, then I think people we've seen from all over the world, from waves of immigration, will go to extraordinary extent, lengths to change where they live. And we also know that a, fairly large share of Hong Kong citizens have means. They're very well educated. So I think the government's own modeling says that they will not get a large wave of immigrants. But I think much depends on how China now plays it, and what happens. I wouldn't discount that there will be a significant number. There already, are I think around 100,000 Hong Kong residents here. We should maybe not quote on that, but far fewer than say Canada and Australia took in, and those countries have received, quite significant benefit from the Hong Kong workers who've moved there, and I think many will wonder whether Britain can benefit in the same way.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. Therese Raphael joining us there from the Bloomberg Opinion Team. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Buffalo Bills have advised season ticket holders there is a chance games may be played without fans this season because of the coronavirus pandemic. With that in mind, the team began emailing season ticket holders this week to give them the chance to opt out of their commitment for this season with an option to return for the 2021 season. They will maintain their account seniority and seat location. Hong Kong's traders and bankers will be missing out this year on one of that city's biggest parties, the Cathay Pacific HSBC Hong Kong Sevens. It's a 3-day rugby tournament that has been canceled because of the coronavirus for the first time since its debut in 1976. Lululemon Athletica is buying Mirror. It's a producer of in-home fitness equipment for $500 million. Home fitness products have gained in popularity as the coronavirus pandemic has shuttered gyms. And that's the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Charlie Pellet.
How long? How much? How many? Financial, policy, and medical experts are working on answers 24/7.
What about public debt?
We are listening to those experts 24/7.
Is the Fed effectively widening this wealth gap with its programs?
Because you want answers too.
What's the most important, the trillions in stimulus, the economy's reopening, or the infections curve bending?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If you're having a business dispute, you know time is money. The longer your case proceeds, the more your case can cost. So speed up your resolution with the American Arbitration Association. Arbitration with the American Arbitration Association is faster. In fact, The median time frame for an American Arbitration Association B2B arbitration to be awarded is nearly 16 months faster than the U.S. courts. ADR.org. Resolve faster.
Jenny Liss.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
And action!
I was offered one.
Cut. That's not on the script.
I was offered one. Get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was offered one.
Come, boy. I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished. With over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
How do we control coronavirus now? Listen to Steph. She's a bus driver.
Now that people are using public transport again, we really need to make sure that we keep each other safe. Passengers need to stay 2 metres apart. If that's not possible, make it at least 1 metre. I want to see everyone wearing face coverings over their mouth and nose, unless you've got a good reason not to. And when you get to where you're going, you need to wash your hands. We've still got to play our part.
Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. Luckily, Friday's Euro Million Super Jackpot is a massive £110 million. Now that's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest editions.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards, not from the Bloomberg offices in London, but from my own living room. That's where we find ourselves these days. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
You know.
Thank you very much.
Wait, are you welcome here? Can you fly? You can fly from the UK to Berlin. I don't think I can. Well, I probably can fly, yes. I could buy a ticket, but whether I would be... it would be tricky, difficult. Let's not go there. But European equity markets finding a path higher this morning, Matt. Yes, European equity indexes are climbing after they fell yesterday on optimism about a vaccine. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But right now we see the DAX up 2%. The FTSE is gaining 1%, about 63 points to 6220. But the German index is doing the best of the bunch today, up to 12,500, adding 242 points. So quite a rally underway. In terms of the U.S. Equity futures contracts, if you're preparing for the open on Wall Street, we're looking at gains there. You know, when we started the European market open this morning, which was now about 2.5 hours ago, there was no movement on the Dow and S&P futures contracts. Now they're up 1%. So they have really climbed. Optimism has increased. And, of course, we're going to get some big deal data points out today. So I'm sure everyone's paying a lot of attention to that. Non-farm payrolls, for example, are going to come today because tomorrow is a holiday for the 4th of July, even though it's the 3rd of July, which the 4th comes on Saturday, so you get it off, I guess, a day early. In any case, expect some volatility around those data releases. Quick look at U.S. Treasuries. They're yielding 0.6726%. A dollar buys you 107.39 yen. So the dollar sinking a little bit in value versus the yen, as well as versus the euro and the pound. A euro going for 112.95, a pound going for 125.16. The Bloomberg Dollar Index is just coming down, so it's falling against most currencies. As that happens, the price of oil rises. Brent crude is going for $42.38 a barrel, and the price of gold rises as well, though it's still below the 1,800 level it took out a couple of days ago. Right now trading at $1,771.24 a troy ounce.
Matt, let's get back to that story you were mentioning around the coronavirus and a vaccine. Now markets are gaining today following positive coronavirus vaccine developments this week. This is an early trial of an experimental vaccine from Pfizer and BioNTech showed it's safe and prompted patients to produce antibodies. At the same time, European countries have reassured their residents of drug supplies amid concerns over the US buying up stocks of Gilead's remdesivir. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg Intelligence senior pharmaceutical analyst Sam Fazeli. Great to speak to you, Sam. So tell me, what is the path of a vaccine between proving to be safe and proving to produce antibodies? What is the part that links that from, hey, brilliant, we've got a vaccine that works? How many hoops are there to be jumped through?
Hi, this is actually John Lowerman. Can you hear me?
Apologies, John. Yes,
no,
wonderful.
Right.
You look so much like Sam on the radio, John.
Yeah, I get mistaken for Sam all the time.
The great thing about radio is we can all be whoever we want to be. But John, I'm so sorry. Please go ahead. Tell us your thoughts, which I'm sure you have many of.
So there are lots of hoops left to jump through. This was a phase 1, phase 2 trial. This is a new type of vaccine, messenger RNA. We've been hearing a lot about it. It is a genetic vaccine. It's a genetic material, not genes themselves, but messenger RNA, which is a molecule that tells cells what kinds of proteins to make. It goes into the cells. It tells them to make proteins that are on the virus, not the virus itself, but little proteins that the immune system recognizes. So it's a new approach to vaccinating people. It's never been used before in actual licensed vaccines, although it has been experimentally used before. And this was a very promising trial because not only did the vaccine indicate that it was safe, the test indicated it was safe in about 45 people, but also they showed strong immune responses. Now, the day before, I think it was, Inovio reported it's a vaccine trial of another genetic approach to vaccination. They did not give the same level of detailed information about the immune response that the study subjects demonstrated, and Inovio did not. The shares fell, basically. But the Pfizer-BioNTech results were very strong. The shares did extremely well for a while, and then later that day, in an interesting development, the FDA released some vaccine guidance that makes it look actually kind of difficult for companies to get these vaccines approved in the U.S., perhaps by the end of the year because of the amount of safety data that they're going to show. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag right now in terms of, at least in the U.S., whether these vaccines are going to be proved and usable and distributable by the end of the year.
It's interesting, John. It's a kind of a mixed bag in terms of the vaccines, although we all, I think, want to be optimistic on this. And hopefully after they tackle this, they can get us a vaccine that works for the flu as well, and other viruses that have been impossible to solve. What do you think about the infection issue, though. Anthony Fauci, I guess, was on BBC Radio 4 earlier, and he was saying, well, it wasn't a mixed bag. It seemed very pessimistic. He said the U.S. faces a very serious situation here because he's seeing very disturbing spikes, those are his words, in some U.S. states, and that the U.S. never got the virus under control before reopening. I have to say, whenever I hear they're reopening, I have to always ask myself, did they ever really shut down? I mean, people don't even wear masks in the U.S. or the U.K. At least they don't seem to have to wear masks, which doesn't make much sense to me here in Berlin because everybody has to wear a mask. So how are we doing in terms of, getting this thing under control, especially in the United States of America?
It was a really pessimistic. I listened to that interview too, Matt, and I think your observations are spot on. Dr. Fauci is extremely disturbed about what he's been seeing. The guidance from the top in the U.S., from the leadership, has not been clear. They've allowed states to do pretty much what they want to respond in the way that they want to respond. And as Dr. Fauci said, while many European states achieved lockdowns of as much as 97%, even at the height of the lockdown in the U.S., only about 50% of the country was actually locked down. And so you had people in some states who were staying inside and wearing masks and avoiding contact with each other. And in other states, people were standing around in swimming pools and, drinking Bud Light, just mere feet from each other without masks on. And the virus was continuing to spread. And we're seeing the results of that now with these surges in the Sun Belt states, Texas, Florida, Arizona, talking about already dialing back their reopening plans. And I think as a public health official, Dr. Fauci has to be really concerned about, the overall attitude that the U.S. has taken. He predicted just the other day that I think they see about 40,000 new cases per day now, perhaps more, and that it may go up as high as 100,000.
John, thank you very much. Thanks for the update. John Lauerman, Bloomberg Health Editor.
Let's get over now to Caroline Hepker now with your global news headlines. Caroline?
Matt, thank you. Well, talking of the coronavirus, the number of daily cases in the United States has now gone over 50,000 for the first time. And President Donald Trump has backed wearing a mask, but he doesn't think that it should be required. Previously, the president had mocked his Democratic challenger, Joe Biden, for wearing a mask when there was nobody around. His comments to Fox television came a day after the Surgeon General urged Americans to wear face coverings.
I'm all for masks. I think masks are good. I would wear, if I were in a group of people and I was close.
You would wear one?
Oh, I would. Oh, I have. I mean, people have seen me wearing one. I have no problem with that. I think, and if people feel good about it, they should do it.
Meanwhile, the US House has passed a sanctions bill in response to Hong Kong's new security law. It targets banks that do business with Chinese officials involved in cracking down on pro-democracy protesters. Before coming into force, the bill still needs to be approved by the Senate and then by the US president. Meanwhile, in the UK, London restaurants, bars and hotels start to reopen this weekend after a 3-month lockdown, and Bloomberg's Richard Vines says it may be a good time to try for hotspots that are normally full.
There are tables going next week at the Wolseley, and Assume Indian cafe chain is taking dinner bookings for the first time. Before, you could spend an hour lined up outside. Chefs are watching nervously to see if people are ready to come out, though the signs are good. More than 44,000 have booked tables since the government last week announced easing the lockdown, and bars are expecting a bonanza. It's pubs that many Londoners have missed most. In London, Richard Vines, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepker. This is Bloomberg.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over. Then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Who's in your corner? At Commonwealth Financial Network, our advisors would say we are. Our supportive environment lets you be true to yourself, and our culture of accountability means we don't just ask for your feedback. We act on it, so we can deliver the solutions you need to enrich the lives of your clients and build the business you've always dreamed of. Ready to discover the difference? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
NJIT, New Jersey.
Different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
Should your kids go back to school? Ask Andrea. She's a teacher.
We're doing everything we can to keep the children safe and happy at school, which is why it's great that more of those who can are coming back, not only for their education, but for their overall well-being too. It gives them a routine, helps develop their social skills, and they get to see their friends too.
If your child is eligible, they should return to school. The government is working towards getting all pupils back in September. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm or to someone called Al, or Jack, or Miguel, or Haley, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
It's been a while since we've all heard this sound. The sound of being free to move. We've missed you, road. Driving as we please may not be the easiest thing right now, but it couldn't be easier to drive away in a Volvo this weekend with 0% APR finance at the Volvo Select Approved Used Car event. For everyone's safety, your visit will need to be arranged in advance. Book your place at volvocars.co.uk.
Used vehicles up to 4 years old. Participating retailers. 50% deposit on minimum £7,000. Conditional sale. Terms, eligibility, guarantee requirements and conditions apply. Volvo Car Financial Services.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, Hilton Knowles on the unrest that followed a police killing in his Brooklyn neighborhood more than 50 years ago.
Standing by my mother's living room window, I tried tentatively to ask her why our world was burning. She gave me a forbidding look. Boy, be quiet so you can survive, her eyes seemed to say.
Hilton Knowles on the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Outdoor activities, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Avoid shared surfaces like swings or benches. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. This is a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. We are looking at a rally that continues to increase in strength here in Europe. The DAX index is now up 264 points to 12,525 for a 2.2% gain. The IBEX 35 in Madrid is up 2.7%. We're looking at lower gains in the UK. The FTSE 100 benchmark index is only up 1%, 64 points to 62.22 right now. But in general, things are looking really risk on. And in the U.S. as well, looking at futures, just about 3 hours ago, there was no movement at all. Now we see gains of 1.1% on Dow Jones mini contracts, S&P minis up about 0.8%, and NASDAQ futures up about 0.5% right now. So it looks like it'll be a risk-on open on Wall Street this morning as well. Investors not doing much with treasuries. Yields hovering around 67 basis points. The same with bunds at -40 and gilts at 0.2035 right now. The dollar is weakening across the board, so you can buy fewer yen right now, 107.36, and you can buy fewer euros. They now cost $1.13.02, so up over that $1.13 level. The pound up over the $1.25 level right now at 125.22. Gold and oil are both gaining strength. If you look at GLCO Go on your Bloomberg, you can see a great overview of currencies. You can see NYMEX WTI is trading at $40.13 a barrel. Brent crude is going for $42.37. And then you can see gold right now trading at $17.71 and 44 cents a troy ounce. Copper, by the way, rising today as well. In fact, most of the metals are, with the exception of aluminum and spot silver, right now going for $17.91. That's a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now let's get back over to Caroline Hepker with more on what's going on around the world. Caroline?
Thanks so much, Matt. Here in the UK, the Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, has announced a new path to the UK for people living in Hong Kong following the introduction of a new security law by Beijing. And in the House of Commons, Boris Johnson condemned China for passing that legislation. Under the UK plan, the status of British national overseas passport holders will be upgraded to offer them a path to UK citizenship. BNO passports are held by some 350,000 people in Hong Kong, with a further 2.5 million eligible for them. The number of daily coronavirus cases in the United States has now topped 50,000 for the first time. Plans to reopen are being halted in areas including New York City and California. Young Americans are partying hard and spreading COVID-19 quickly. From Arizona to Florida, young people are driving positive cases now. The dropping age of the infected is becoming one of the most pressing problems in tackling the pandemic. Yesterday, local officials in the US continued to set curfews and close places where young people are gathering. Elsewhere, Mexico has now overtaken Spain to have the world's 6th most deadly outbreak of the coronavirus, and the French health minister Olivier Véran this morning said that all indicators on the positive side are showing that coronavirus is under control now in mainland France. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Caroline Hepker. This is Bloomberg Matt.
We are, I think, one of the most interesting stories, and we've been talking about it today on Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio, is that the average age of someone infected with the coronavirus is falling quickly in the U.S. So younger people are getting it, and they don't realize, because a lot of younger people get it and don't even show symptoms. But still, we heard that 15% of people in intensive care units are, in their 20s and 30s. So.
Yeah, look, it's really grim. But I mean, the truth is that there needs to be more testing, doesn't there, across the West in order to find those hotspots and squash them. The French have managed to do it because they had a few flare-ups post the lockdown. The French health minister saying that actually they've overcome that now, but it seems to be about testing, doesn't it?
Right. Well, and wear masks. Why isn't that mandatory? I'm going to go over to Nathan Hager right now. He's getting ready for Daybreak Americas. And
Good morning.
Nathan, I don't think that everyone understands. The point of a mask isn't to protect the wearer. The point of the mask is to protect other people
around you.
Yeah, and so here in Germany, you have to wear a mask. If you're going to go into a store, if you're going to go into any public space, you must be wearing a mask. And as a result, we don't have that big of a problem, really.
Right.
How come people in the U.S.
Well,
why am I asking you?
It's the big, yeah, that's right. Ask me specifically, but I mean that is the big push-pull, isn't it? And the story that we're hearing from the White House Coronavirus Task Force is that they're strongly urging people to wear masks, but they're very resistant.
But who's resistant and why? I mean, they even look kind of cool. I wear a bandana.
Right. And actually, that's sort of funny you say that because President Trump is now starting to say, yeah, I kind of like how I look at a mask. He said that in an interview yesterday, but there is still this resistance to making it a mandate, this whole idea of, telling people what they have to do, just fundamentally.
You Americans and your freedom.
Right. What
do you got coming up on the program?
Well, we're getting ready for Jobs Thursday, and it's going to be a pretty interesting one, just, from the fact that usually it's Jobs Friday, but we're heading into a holiday weekend where, with coronavirus continuing to spread, you wonder just how much of a holiday it's going to be. With those numbers hitting a new daily record of 50,000 across the U.S., you sort of wonder whatever job number we're going to get between the monthly payrolls report and the latest weekly jobless claims, how much they're actually going to say about the true state of the labor market in this country as governments dial back their reopenings, potentially taking more people off the payrolls. But we're going to try to sort this all out this morning with economists Mark Vittner of Wells Fargo Securities and Kevin Cummins of NatWest Markets as we get set for Jobs Thursday. Coming up with me and Karen Moscow on Bloomberg Daybreak. Hope you'll join us for it.
Yeah, definitely look forward to hearing from Vittner, a great economist to check in with. Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow coming up if you're tuned in on Sirius XM Channel 119. If you're listening on London DAB Digital, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Matt, let's get back to a conversation about the markets. Fresh optimism in the markets today following positive developments on a coronavirus vaccine is fueling hopes for a recovery. And according to our next guest, sectors like technology and telecoms are likely to emerge as the clear winners. On the other hand, retail, energy, airlines will have to consolidate for more. Let's bring in Davide Serra, CEO and founder at Algebris UK. Davide, great to speak to you. So these are the kind of the sector lines that we're drawing these days, technology and telecoms versus anything where you need to be in a confined space with anybody, I suppose. Where would you go in particular for gains in technology?
The issue, I think, is anything that has to do with enabling real businesses, so businesses that basically need a face-to-face to better operate. And so that could be business services, cloud computing, not necessarily the actual broadband or the telephone operator itself. That's pretty much a commodity, and there's no added value in it. So it's just a cost-cutting exercise. And I think then all the mid-caps that actually do software development to further digitalize the supply chain. And so there are many mid-caps actually across Europe. You just don't need to own, the big U.S. tech company, which probably today are over-owned, and they're under risk, one day of eventually paying taxes in the UK too, and secondly, they might have antitrust issue in the States and in Europe.
So these are companies that I guess you're looking at that will benefit from the virus, the crisis, the pandemic. What about the companies that look like they have been hurt the most? Do you see them coming back? I mean, these old economy companies, that have been suffering from a lack of revenue during the past few months, and demand has been hit so hard. Do you think that'll recover?
I think most of the hit, in my view, will be felt by the small street retailers. And the issue is because they were non-competitive on an absolute cost basis. So if you think the model of warehousing material and shipping it, it's much more cost-effective than having your own shop, paying rent, hiring people. So I think there are two losers. The number one loser will be landowner and real estate owner that have been doing basic retail. I think there will be less and less small shops. Secondly, and I think that those are the number one loser. So real estate retail, small operator. Secondly, I think the next loser are likely to be those that have an excessive cost base. And here is where I do believe the scale across Europe will need to go up in any business. Simply because pandemic is a revenue shrinkage. And so the only way you can compensate, unless you have state aid, is actually to cut costs. And that is applying to everyone, everywhere. No one is immune.
All right, well, the good news, Davide, is that we have you for another block here on Bloomberg Radio if you're listening on London DAB digital radio, because Davide is going to go on Bloomberg Surveillance. If you want to catch more from him and you're in the U.S., just switch over to Bloomberg TV and you'll see more from Davide Serra, the CEO and founder at Algebris UK. Up next, this is Bloomberg.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Thursday morning by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
When you're buying tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm or to someone called Al, or Priya, or Lewis, or Zoe, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, it's Ali. What are you searching for?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The surge in coronavirus infections continues across the South.
California hits pause on indoor business in most of the state.
McDonald's and Apple roll back reopening plans.
And Wall Street awaits monthly jobs data that may already be outdated.
Dining in New York City restaurants is officially on hold, while New Jersey sounds the alarm about a sudden uptick in cases. I'm Amy Morris. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The NFL has cut the preseason in half, and we'll hear from Aaron Boone. His Yankees back together again.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by SEI. Crises bring out the best in people. Character, community, partnership. Together as one, SEI. Go to SEIC.com/IMS.
And U.S. futures are gaining ahead of the monthly payrolls report. 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 20 points. Dow futures up 226. NASDAQ futures up 50. The DAX in Germany's up 2%. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.16%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.4% or 15 cents at $39.97 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $2.90 at $17.82.80 an ounce. Nathan.
Karen, the surge in coronavirus infections continues throughout the South. Arizona reported a record number of cases on the same day Vice President Mike Pence paid a visit to the state.
We say to the people of Arizona, we're with you. We're going to make sure that Arizona has whatever it takes to meet this moment.
Arizona registered nearly 5,000 new cases, plus increases in deaths and emergency room admissions. Pence is asking residents to take precautions.
Wear a mask when indicated by state or local authorities, or when social distancing is not possible.
Infections in Florida continue to rise, prompting Miami-Dade County to require masks in public. Beaches are closed in the county, but open in other parts of the state. Governor Ron DeSantis is pushing back against criticism of the move.
I'm more concerned about, people crowding into the AC and having private parties and things like that, where you're real close contact.
Daily infections also hit a record in Texas, where intensive care units in Houston have now exceeded capacity. For the first time, daily coronavirus cases passed 50,000 nationwide, the highest level yet in the pandemic.
The South isn't the only place seeing a surge. As cases in California rise, the state is shutting down indoor business in counties holding over 70% of the population. Ed Baxter has the latest from our Bloomberg 960 newsroom in San Francisco.
Governor Gavin Newsom says Los Angeles County is included.
In restaurants, wineries, and tasting rooms, movie theaters, family entertainment, broadly defined, zoos, museums, and card rooms.
He also said the state is setting up what he calls enforcement strike teams made up of regulators which can act on businesses. He's also discouraging family 4th of July gatherings, saying extended families are among the fastest growing spread of the virus. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thanks, Ed. As the outbreak spreads, McDonald's is stopping dine-in services at all locations across the country. Apple had just reopened stores. Now it's closing them again. With more on that, here's Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The technology giant is closing several stores in the Los Angeles area, along with locations in Las Vegas, Alabama, Idaho, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Louisiana. It earlier shut stores in Florida, Mississippi, Texas, and Utah, bringing the total to 77. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. As business hits pause across the country, it raises questions about how relevant today's jobs data will be. We get the payrolls report for June about 3.5 hours from now. And here with the preview is Bloomberg economic correspondent Michael McKee.
The spike in COVID cases around the country has states and cities rolling back reopening plans, raising questions about how many people hired back in June will be unemployed again in July. The unemployment rate, meanwhile, will suffer from classification errors, either continued confusion about who is or isn't on payrolls, or because they've fixed the errors and the data don't line up with previous months. Political candidates will jump on any numbers that might suggest how fast the labor market is recovering, while the Black Lives Matter protests put a spotlight on minority unemployment rates. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thank you. And tune in for live coverage and analysis of that jobs data at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time, followed by an interview with White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow. Catch that conversation at 10 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
On the policy front, minutes from the latest Fed meeting show officials staying clear of yield curve control. For now, Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with details. Good morning, John.
Yeah, Nathan, Fed officials did discuss setting targets for Treasury yields, but the minutes show they remain wary. The minutes also note a need for highly accommodated monetary policy for some time. Some officials expressed concern that low yields make their asset purchases less effective. Now, when it comes to the economy, policymakers expect consumer spending to rebound strongly in the second half. They also appear willing to push lawmakers for additional stimulus. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. And on the political front, the House has passed or unanimously passed a bill imposing sanctions on banks that do business with China. We get the details on the measure from Bloomberg's Selena Wang in Beijing.
This bill is similar but not identical to the measure passed by the Senate last week, which would impose sanctions on banks that do business with Chinese officials involved in cracking down on Hong Kong. But this bill does still need to be approved by the Senate again before going to President Trump for his signature. But that is expected to happen very soon. This move is in response to China enacting the national security law in Hong Kong, which goes beyond what many investors, democracy advocates, and even pro-Beijing politicians have expected. According to Bloomberg Intelligence, China's largest banks have some $1.1 trillion in dollar funding at stake and face potentially steep fines from this sanctions bill.
Bloomberg's Selena Wang reports this measure comes in addition to sanctions punishing China over human rights abuses. Those penalties had been delayed by the White House as officials negotiated their Phase 1 trade deal. Futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up 21 points. Dow futures up 229. NASDAQ futures up 49. The euro at 1.1295 against the dollar. The yen is at 107.35. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:07 on Wall Street. Let's get more now on how the New York City region is reacting to the spread of coronavirus. Here's Bloomberg's Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. As the number of positive coronavirus cases in more than half of the country continues to rise, in New York State, Governor Andrew Cuomo says virus testing is open to all residents.
We're now expanding our testing criteria. We have so increased our testing capacity that we can expand our testing criteria.
He says it doesn't cost anything, it doesn't hurt, and he is urging all New Yorkers to get tested. There are now more than 750 testing sites throughout the state of New York. Indoor dining at New York City restaurants is on hold out of concern it would cause a spike in coronavirus infections. Mayor Bill de Blasio says there's still plenty of room for dining al fresco.
It is the time to double down on outdoor dining. And so far, we have 6,600 restaurants that have taken advantage of our Open Restaurant Initiative. I believe there are many more that could benefit from it.
De Blasio did say New Yorkers are free to hit the shoreline now.
Our New York City beaches open today.
Atlantic City's casinos will also open today. Gamblers will not be allowed to smoke, drink, or eat anything inside the casinos. They'll have to wear masks and have their temperatures checked. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says residents can still easily undo all of the work toward curbing the spread of the coronavirus.
Everyone needs to be an example of personal responsibility. It isn't up to some of us to beat COVID-19. It's up to every single one of the 9 million of us.
New Jersey has also hit pause on reopening indoor dining. There has been a one-day uptick in coronavirus hospitalizations. President Trump said he would wear a mask if he were in a, quote, tight situation with people, but that he's not convinced they should be required, even as cases are spiking in parts of the country.
I have no problem with that. I think, and if people feel good about it, they should do it.
The president tells Fox Business that everyone around him is tested for coronavirus. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashower.
Good morning, Nathan. That ugly baseball labor dispute that nearly prevented any season from being played created bad blood that could linger into the negotiations for an actual collective bargaining agreement. The current one expires after next season, and this won't help. Commissioner Rob Manfred telling Dan Patrick's radio show that the owners were never going to agree to play more than the 60 games they are playing. That may come as news to the players, whose first proposal was for 114 games. For now, players back with their teams. Aaron Boone talked to the Yes Network about precautions at Yankee camp.
We'll work closely with the guidelines, with trainers, with how we have to, space guys out and work things out. We feel like we've got a pretty good plan in place. We know we're going to have to remain flexible as we go, as things change. But I do feel like we're ready to, kick things off and hopefully make the most of the 3 weeks we have building up into the season.
Boone's Yankees were supposed to play a game this season in Iowa against the White Sox, so-called Field of Dreams game, but They aren't playing the White Sox, so they're not going to travel that far. So reportedly, the White Sox will instead face the Cardinals in Iowa on August 13th. They have built an 8,000-seat stadium for the game, but presumably fans will not be allowed in. Bill Cowher, the former Steelers coach, was to be inducted into the Hall of Fame next month. Those ceremonies put off until next year. Cowher has revealed that he and his wife both had the virus, had symptoms in March after a trip to New York. Never got tested, but got a positive test for antibodies in April. The virus causing the NFL to do something that many have called for anyway, a reduction of the preseason, at least for this year, goes from 4 games down to 2. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
And John, please join us tonight for Bloomberg Business of Sports, and we'll have a wide-ranging interview with the CEO of the Atlanta Hawks, Steve Koonin. Talk about getting back to basketball during the pandemic, plus the team turning its arena into Georgia's largest ever voting center this fall. Those are just some of the topics that'll come up tomorrow at 7 and Saturday at 11 a.m. on Bloomberg Radio. You can also subscribe to Bloomberg Business of Sports wherever you get your podcasts. S&P futures are higher by 19 points ahead of the release of the jobs report and the weekly unemployment claims. Dow futures ahead by 225 points. This is Bloomberg.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart is different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
Listening has always taught us a lot at Honda. And lately, we've been listening to your thumbs. Because thumbs can do everything now. The world is at their thumb tips. So now the My Honda Plus app lets the thumb take control of your car too. Even when you're not inside the new Honda E, your thumb can find where you parked, set the temperature before you get in, check how much the battery is charged, and schedule charging for when electricity is cheapest. The new Honda E and My Honda Plus app. Oh, a thumbs up. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions.
Okay, guys. I placed an order to sell short United States dollar against Canadian dollar. So the order placed at 135.91. And position open. I open position at 135.91. Okay.
It's really a democratic brand, a brand of all people.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are rising along with U.S. stock index futures as hopes for reassuring jobs data later in Washington adds to momentum from positive vaccine developments. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 21 points. Dow futures up 233. NASDAQ futures up 52. The DAX in Germany is up 2%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32nd. Yield 0.67%. Yield on the 2-year 0.16%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.5% or 21 cents at $40.04 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $3.80 at $17.8370 an ounce. The euro 1.1296 against the dollar. British pound 1.2524 and the yen is at 107.38. Today we are watching for the June jobs report at 8:30 Wall Street time. We also get the weekly report on initial jobless claims as well as the trade balance. The Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index is out at 9:45, followed by factory orders and durable goods orders at 10. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Karen, the surge in coronavirus infections continues across the South. Arizona reporting a record number of cases, plus increases in deaths and emergency room admissions. Daily infections hit a record in Texas, where intensive care units in Houston have now exceeded full capacity. Infections in Florida also on the rise, prompting Miami-Dade County to require masks in public. Pennsylvania is requiring masks, too. For the first time, daily coronavirus cases passed 50,000 nationwide. That is the highest level yet in the pandemic. Other news we're watching, House lawmakers have passed a bill imposing sanctions on banks that do business with Chinese officials involved in cracking down on pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. The measure could head to the president's desk as early as today. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. It's 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and we're joined now by Mark Vittner, senior economist at Wells Fargo, on an unusual jobs day. We get the weekly unemployment claims and the June payrolls report at the same time later this morning. Mark, good morning to you. I wonder how much weight we're going to put on these numbers, given the dial back in the reopenings we're seeing in much of the country, particularly in the South and West, with coronavirus continuing to spread.
It's a very good question, because I think that most folks are expecting the overall number to be up solidly. Our own forecast is for a net gain of 3.3 million, and we base that off the fact that from mid-May to mid-June, which is the period covered by the employment report, that there was more improvement in the economy than there was from mid-April to mid-May. And so we know that number is going to be solid, but we've really seen the economy slow the last couple of weeks. And that's something that the jobless claims number may tell us about, because it covers the period through June 27th. And most folks are looking for just some modest improvement, a decline of about 100,000 or so. If that number comes in, if it comes in that it doesn't improve, or that it actually turns the other way, then I think it could actually outshine the employment report.
Could we see further distortion in the data? Of course, with the May payrolls report, we got a lot of people that were counted as still employed rather than temporarily laid off. Do you think that's going to get fixed this time around?
I don't think it's something that's necessarily going to be fixed, because I think that there's always...
I'm trying to put stop on profit for Canadian dollar to 135.88 or even 89. Yeah. Let's see, it's supposed to reach 135.87. Okay. Yeah. We on. Stop on profit at 135.89.1. It will give us £200 profit.
gradual downward trend. Do you see that continuing, particularly with the possibility of the Paycheck Protection Program being extended?
I think there's a risk that we could see a little bit of a rebound, not just because of the potential expiration of the payroll protection program. Because I think that there'll be some fixes there, but I'm more worried about just a pullback in engagement by businesses and consumers. And we saw a lot of lockdown orders go across California yesterday. We've got a report that we're working on there that looking at California, I mean, the numbers are just horrendous, particularly in Southern California. And Southern California accounts for about 5% of our U.S. GDP, but it accounts for almost 9% of U.S. GDP growth over the last 5 years. And so a lot of the places that are seeing this resurgence in the coronavirus are places that account for a disproportionate share of U.S. economic growth.
I want to get your take on the Fed minutes as well. A lot of discussion from policymakers about whether to be more forceful in calling for further fiscal stimulus. Do you see the Fed leaning that way, sort of blurring the line even further between monetary and fiscal policy?
Well, I think that they're trying to figure out a way to do this without blurring that line and being very specific and saying, these are the things that monetary policy can accomplish. These are the things that fiscal policy can accomplish. We're responsible for monetary policy. You're responsible for fiscal policy. And just basically laying it out in those terms. I don't think they want to get back into a position where they're promoting one type of action or another on the fiscal side.
Mm-hmm. In our last 30 seconds here, how do you think this latest jobs data could affect the Fed's decisions when it comes to forward guidance?
Well, I think that we would have to see a more thorough improvement than we saw in May, and that not just the total number of jobs increasing, but we'd have to see a much broader-based recovery. I mean, really what we've seen is a huge drop in restaurant jobs and a partial rebound. We saw the same thing in healthcare, where the doctors and dentist offices all closed and a few of them reopened. And I think that's really what we're going to see here. I don't know how broad-based this is going to be, and we really want to see, what the Fed needs to see is a self-reinforcing recovery. We don't see that yet.
All right, Mark Vittner, senior economist, Wells Fargo. The June jobs report and the weekly unemployment claims due out 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. We will have full coverage here for you on Bloomberg Radio. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The June jobs report is out today. It's a day earlier than usual because of the Independence Day holiday celebrated tomorrow. Economists are expecting to see that employers added just over 3 million workers. That would represent a second month of record gains. The jobless rate is expected to fall from 13.3 to 12.5%. The House has voted to extend the popular Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses until August 8th, following the Senate's approval Tuesday, shortly before the initial deadline for applications. More than $130 billion was left in the program after the deadline passed. A person familiar with the matter says President Donald Trump is expected to sign the extension. Wall Street kicked off the new quarter on a mixed note. The Dow fell 78, the S&P 500 rose 16, the NASDAQ was up 96. The stock futures are pointing to gains at the open this morning. Dow futures up more than 200 points, and NYMEX crude is just under $40 a barrel. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
In line with government guidelines, face coverings are now compulsory on public transport. At Asda, you can get a 4-pack of Prima disposable face coverings for £2.80, or a 2-pack of washable face coverings from £2.50. Asda, we're all in this together. Selected stores subject to availability.
I was offered one.
I was offered one. Were you?
Yeah, I was offered one too.
1 2 1 2. I was offered one.
I was offered one.
Don't take our word for it. 9 out of 10 people said they were offered a great value deal with O2. Get yours today, in-store, online, or by phone.
I was offered one too. O2 Retail Exit Survey 309 of 348 agreed with the statement. O2 offered me a great value deal. For full verification, see o2.co.uk/terms.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished, with over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for all those video conferences with your colleagues while sitting at your makeshift desk, you could ask a computer, or someone called Colin, or Luth, or Ange, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hi, you're talking to Colette on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining ahead of the monthly jobs report, and despite a surge in coronavirus infections, Arizona reported a record number of cases. On the same day, Vice President Mike Pence paid a visit to the state.
With cases rising dramatically, not just here in Maricopa County, but all across Arizona, we wanted to be here to get a report from the ground.
That report showed a daily jump of 5,000 new cases. Daily infections also hit a record in Texas, where intensive care units in Houston have now exceeded full capacity.
Well, the outbreak has California Governor Gavin Newsom shutting down some business operations.
We have specifically targeted our efforts to close indoor operations, and I want to reinforce this. Indoor operations.
That move will affect counties holding more than 70% of the state's population as cases in California rise. Still, President Trump expects the pandemic to fade. He spoke with Blake Berman on Fox Business.
I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope.
You still believe so? Disappear?
Well, I do. Yeah, sure, at some point. And I think we're going to have a vaccine very soon, too.
For the first time, daily coronavirus cases passed 50,000 nationwide. That's the highest level yet in the pandemic.
As fresh restrictions take effect, it raises questions about how relevant today's jobs data will be. Paul Krugman is Distinguished Professor of Economics at City University of New York.
Going to look good, but it's going to be in the rearview mirror, and it's going to be a dead cat bounce. And it's clear that the high-frequency data and everything we're seeing says that we just hit a wall because of the spike in cases in the Sun Belt.
Tune in 3 hours from now for live coverage and analysis of the payrolls report, followed by an interview with White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow.
In the meantime, minutes from the latest Fed meeting show officials staying clear of yield curve control for now. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with details. Good morning, John.
And Nathan, central bankers seem opposed to caps on yields or targets anytime soon. Nearly all the participants had questions regarding the costs and benefits of yield curve control. They also appear ready to enhance forward guidance by tying future moves to inflation or unemployment. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. S&P futures are up 19 points this morning. Dow futures up 215. NASDAQ futures up 44. The 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.67%. And NYMEX crude oil is up 0.6% or 24 cents at $40.07 a barrel. The euro, 1.1291 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thanks. It's 5:33 on Wall Street. Let's get more details on the coronavirus surge. Here's Bloomberg's Amy Morris. Amy?
Nathan, we're seeing more positive coronavirus cases than ever each day in the U.S., and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is making testing available now to all New York residents for free.
Position closed. Position closed on United States dollar against Canadian dollar. Total profit £200.
Of the virus in New York City has put a hold on indoor dining. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the infection spikes in places that have tried indoor dining as a deterrent.
We're going to work with the state of New York to figure out what is the exact right way to do this. How to postpone indoor dining till the right moment. What the approach would be to determine when it makes sense to go about it again.
De Blasio did say beaches are open just in time for the long Independence Day weekend.
We are ready for a great holiday weekend. The lifeguards are ready to go. New Yorkers can stay cool.
A one-day uptick in hospitalizations in New Jersey rang alarm bells for Governor Phil Murphy. In the past day, 45 people died from COVID-19.
We know we are going to keep having days where the numbers go up. The task for all of us is to make sure that those one-day increases don't turn into trends.
New Jersey has also delayed reopening indoor dining. Murphy says it's easy to become complacent.
No one, absolutely no one, especially our younger residents, can be lulled into complacency and think it's okay to crowd around bars without any regard for those around us. That is how we backslide. That's how we get pushed off our road back.
Atlantic City casinos reopened today with masks required and with temperature checks. No food, no beverages, no smoking. President Trump tells Fox Business that masks are fine if you want to wear one, but he doesn't believe they have to be required.
I'm all for masks. I think masks are good. I would wear, if I were in a group of people and I was close.
You would wear one?
Oh, I would. Oh, I have. I mean, people have seen me wearing one.
While he is pushed back against wearing a mask himself, he says he likes the way he looks in a mask. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here again, John Stashar.
Thanks, Nathan. Mets and Yankees have begun summer training. Players got tested yesterday. There'll be workouts this weekend. And Aaron Boone told the Yes Network that before the July 23rd opening day, his team will be playing against each other.
It's going to be different than a normal spring training. We're going to, put a lot of value on live reps, pitchers facing hitters, hitters facing pitchers, getting live defensive reps, trying to build guys up as safely and as smartly as we can. But we are going to put a value on competition from pretty early on in camp.
Boone's Yankees appear healthy with Aaron Judge, Aaron Hicks, James Paxton, and Giancarlo Stanton all having pretty much recovered from injuries. Stanton expected to be used mostly as the DH. At Mets camp, Yoenis Cespedes, remember him? He's only played 38 games since 2017, but after surgery on both heels, he could be the Mets DH. It's now the rule in both leagues. The Mets say Michael Conforto, who hurt his oblique in the spring, has recovered. And the Angels say Shohei Ohtani will be their DH when he's not pitching. He'll go back to doing both. Last Last season, he was just a hitter. The Mexican Baseball League, which has been around for nearly a century, was to start play next month, now canceling the season. NBA veteran Thabo Sefolosha, the Houston Rockets, the latest to choose not to play the restart of the NBA season. Lou Williams, the key member of the Clippers, was said to be wavering, but Coach Doc Rivers says he expects Williams to play. Denver Nuggets say All-Star Nikola Jokic feels great, recently tested positive. He and all NBA players arrive in Orlando next week. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
Thank you, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street and time for the Tri-State Business Report with Bloomberg's Joan Doniger. Good morning, Joan.
Nathan, Manhattan home sales fell the most on record last quarter when New Yorkers were locked down during the worst of the city's experience with the pandemic. Miller Samuel and Douglas Elliman Real Estate say purchases of co-ops and condos fell 54% from a year earlier, the biggest year-over-year drop since the firm started keeping records. The median price of deals fell 18% year-over-year, too. That was the biggest drop since 2009. Restaurateurs across the city are largely understanding about pushing back the start of indoor dining. Some of the people who talked to Bloomberg said they weren't counting on it anyway. It's a matter of safety first, but others say it is a blow to the people they've started to hire back and staffs that will have to stay on unemployment. And the parent company of Northfield Bank is buying the parent company of Victory State Bank. CityBiz says the merger will expand Northfield's presence in Staten Island. Northfield also has 17 branches in New Jersey and 8 in Brooklyn. With the Tri-State Business Report, I'm Joan Doniger. Nathan?
All right, Joan, thanks. It's 5:38 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
Steve Podeskin on 1010 Wins in New York. We're talking about Manhattan home sales sinking in the second quarter, the most on record.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KTRH in Houston. Americans face a 25% jump in power bills, adding to woes.
I'm Roger Hearing on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on Britain's plans to allow up to 3 million people to move to the UK from Hong Kong.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WBBM in Chicago, I'm reporting that McDonald's is hitting the pause button on dining in as coronavirus cases rise in some parts of the country.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WGY in Albany, I'm reporting Kohl's is being accused of violating New York State's wage laws.
Those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. And some other stories we're following. JetBlue has agreed not to furlough any pilots involuntarily until next May. That's in exchange for unspecified contract concessions designed to help the carrier cut expenses. Airlines worldwide have been slashing costs and reducing operations in response to the near disappearance of demand. Novartis is ending almost a decade of litigation. It's agreeing to pay more than $670 million to resolve a whistleblower case and accuse the drug maker of paying kickbacks to doctors who prescribed its medications. And Lemonade has raised nearly $320 million in its U.S. IPO. That is above the marketed range. It'll give the online home insurance provider a market value of $1.6 billion. Lemonade is backed by Japan's SoftBank Group. It begins trading today on the New York Stock Exchange. It is 5:40 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with the cover on the King and the CEO. How LeBron James and business partner Maverick Carter are expanding their media empire at perhaps just the right moment. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. And listen to Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio. Watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just visit youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. Futures moving higher this morning. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA.
Different adapts. Different overcomes. Different keeps moving. Different keeps thinking. Different stays connected. Different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
London. Toolstation are here to help get your job safely started and finished. With over 60 branches within the M25. All open with social distancing and contactless click and collect from 5 minutes. And with 20,000 top trade quality products to choose from. Order online now for collection in London branches and get £5 off when you spend over £30 with the code LON530. So, get your job started at toolstation.com. Terms and conditions apply.
How do we control coronavirus now? This is Scott. He's a nurse.
NHS Test and Trace helps stop the spread of the virus in our communities. If you've got symptoms, even...
Well, if you would like to purchase this strategy, that's on our site, companyeye.co.uk, or you can go to companyeye.co.uk/daytradingstrategy.html. What I want to say that we are not an academy or trading college. We do not teach the way academy do. If you would like to learn and trade like we do, you need to get the strategy and add it to our live trades. We're real-time traders. All our sessions are live, and we trade our own funds live, and you need to practice live. This is our way to teach you to day trade.
Experts online with Shop Live.
Honda. We're not a car company. We're more of a listening company. And now our ears have brought our attention to where people feel most comfortable, the lounge. So we asked ourselves, what could Honda do to innovate in this space? Well, how about more space? Calm and uncluttered, with modern yet retro styling, and built-in screens compatible with your games console. It's the most comfortable lounge you've ever driven. Introducing the new Honda E, our small electric city car. Honda, the power of dreams.
And at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
To close in most parts of the state due to a troubling increase of COVID-19 cases. Nick Watt is in Los Angeles.
Every state beach parking lot in Southern California and the Bay Area will now be closed for the 4th of July weekend. Bars, dine-in restaurants and movie theaters will also now close again in 19 Californian counties for at least 3 weeks.
Police in Seattle have cleared out protesters tearing down their camping sites in the city's so-called occupied protest zone after an order from Mayor Jenny Durkin.
They are also in direct contrast to the message ringing from the streets that Black Lives Matter. I will continue to refocus our energy on the hard but critical work to answer the voices demonstrating and demanding change.
The action follows 2 fatal shootings in that area in less than 2 weeks. I'm Elliot Francis.
It's a new disease making an unprecedented impact.
The job losses were widespread.
It is a stunningly historic moment.
Your best strategy?
Is this a market that's accepted reality?
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks rising this morning along with U.S. stock index futures as hopes for reassuring jobs data later in Washington add to momentum from positive vaccine developments. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 18 points, Dow futures up 207, NASDAQ futures up 41. The DAX in Germany's up 1.8%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32nd, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.16%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.6% or 23 cents at $40.05 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $3.70 at $17.8360 an ounce. The euro 1.1285 against the dollar, British pound 1.2518, and the yen 107.43. Today we are watching for the June jobs report at 8:30 Wall Street time. The report is being released a day early as markets will be closed tomorrow for the 4th of July holiday. We also get the weekly report on initial jobless claims as well as the trade balance. The Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index is out at 9:45, followed by factory orders and durable goods orders at 10. And copper is moving closer to wiping out this year's losses after the coronavirus pandemic started to curb output in the
chairman of the Manufacturing Business Survey at the Institute for Supply Management on the data, plus Tom Orlick, head of Bloomberg Economics. We're going to get his revised economic outlook. That's all coming up on Bloomberg Markets. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
All stocks climbed early after positive coronavirus vaccine developments, better than expected manufacturing data, and a surprise profit from economic bellwether FedEx. Treasuries and the dollar are down. We take a look at these numbers every 15 minutes. The S&P is currently up 0.5%, up 14. The Dow's up 0.2%, up 50, and the Nasdaq is up 0.6%, up 55. The 10-year is down 10/30 seconds. The yield is 0.69%. West Texas Intermediate crude is nearing that $40 a barrel mark. It's up 1.2% at $39.74, while COMEX gold is down 1.4% at $17.75 even per ounce. The dollar yen 107.51. The euro $1.1264. The British pound $1.2461. Tesla has displaced Toyota as the world's most valuable automaker, underscoring investor enthusiasm for a company trying to transform an industry that's relied on internal combustion engines for more than 130 years. Shares of Tesla, which have more than doubled since the start of the year, have climbed as much as 4.7% in intraday trading, currently up 4.6%.
As you can see, I moved further my stop on profit for British pound to 124.501. So we're already in £5,000 profit from trading British pound. I'm wondering where it will go, how far it will go. Yeah. Okay, we will see.
For the Institute for Supply Management based in Florida. Tim, thanks so much for joining us here. It seems like a good number. Is it just because we're reopening and it was kind of easy comps? What's your view on kind of what we saw in June?
Surprised by the strength on the new order side, on the demand side, supported by the fact that the backlog
would give you confidence that maybe this economic recovery is, in fact, has some steam to it?
Well, I think the next 3 months is going to tell a story. I wouldn't feel overly concerned if it was a 48.5 either. I mean, I think that means we've kind of stabilized, and I believe based on the information here, it's going to be a slow growth.
The thing of it is, Tim, we had counties and states, so-called reopening, whatever that meant. But I mean, many of them, if they're not reclosing, they should be, or they will be very soon, right? If you take Dr. Fauci seriously, the death toll is going to go up pretty exponentially from here. That does not bode well for manufacturing, does it?
No, it does not. But I think it's going to be more of a county, a city, metropolitan area issue. I don't believe, and there's comments I'm getting from the community here, I don't think anybody really thinks that we're going to shut states down again. So we're going to need to figure out how to get through this. But we do also believe that factories are going to start and stop, and they're going to do 4 days when they plan on doing 5 because they got to sanitize, and it's going to be a rough start. But I think it's going to be more of a metropolitan area, county area. I don't think anybody feels that the whole states are going to be shut down again. It's just too damaging.
Tim, in your data set, what are some of the forward-looking data that you get that you kind of focus on?
So I would really like to see that backlog of orders numbers get up over 50. That would make me feel really good, because that then says that factories have output to satisfy, and that then will drive the employment number up too. So, even with the new orders, I like the new order number 56.4. Even if it was 52, 53, I'd be okay with that. What I would really like to see is a backlog number come up. And if the production number stays above 50, that means that people are building backlog, which gives them more confidence to invest in the future. Right now, the investment side is pretty much dried up. Everybody is very uncertain about where to invest their money in long-term investments, 2-year type durable goods.
Tim, always a pleasure speaking with you. This, of course, Tim Fiore, who tells us all about the ISM manufacturing data every month. He's chairman of the Manufacturing Business Survey at the ISM. And, of course, the overall reading came in at 52.6 in June, much better than the 49.8 that economists were looking for. It is time now to turn our attention to small cap stocks today. They are lower. Let's bring in Dave Wilson to tell us more. Dave, it would appear that the miners are not helping things.
No, and there are a whole lot of other stocks that aren't either. And when you consider the Russell 2000 index is down 0.5%, the S&P 500 is up 0.5%. Biggest drop in the Russell actually belongs to Inovio Pharmaceuticals, whose ticker is INO. The developer of a COVID-19 vaccine has dropped almost 18%. Inovio was cut to sell from neutral at Roth Capital Partners, which cited the competition in terms of COVID-19 vaccines. Chiasma, ticker CHMA, has fallen 11%. The drug developer raised $70 million by selling shares and warrants. And Denny's, ticker DENN, has declined 9%. The restaurant chain sold $73 million of stock. That's equivalent to a 12.5% stake. The Russell's biggest gain belongs to Akero Therapeutics, ticker AKRO. The drug developer has risen 31% in response to favorable study data on a treatment for a liver disease. And Axogen, ticker AXGN, has climbed about 22%. The medical equipment maker lined up as much as $75 million in financing through a 7-year agreement with Overland Capital. Axogen has already borrowed $35 million under that deal.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Looking at the markets here, as Dave was mentioning, the Russell Index is down about 0.5%, but some of the other indices are trading higher here ever so slightly. The S&P up about almost 0.5% at 15 points, 31.15 on the S&P 500. The Dow Jones Industrial up about 0.2%. That's 48 points. That puts the Dow Jones Industrials at 25,000. Let's call it 860. We'll round up a little bit on the Dow. And NASDAQ up 0.6%, 63 points at 10,121. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Martin DeCaro of Bloomberg News. Bloomberg.
Hello, Paul. President Trump is denouncing New York City's plan to paint the words Black Lives Matter in a mural along Fifth Avenue outside Trump Tower. On Twitter, the president called it a symbol of hate and admonished the city to spend more money fighting crime instead. The president's racial invective, his handling of the coronavirus, and other factors have combined to diminish his standing in the polls. A new Pew Research Center survey out today says 54% of registered voters back Democratic challenger Joe Biden. 44% support President Trump. But that same Pew Research survey found among evangelical Protestants, Trump rating remains strong at 72%. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says his government will allow almost 3 million Hong Kong citizens to move to the UK, risking a further escalation of tensions with China after it enforced a sweeping security law on the former British colony. Speaking in the House of Commons today, the British Prime Minister said the legislation contravenes the 1984 treaty, which set out the one country, two systems approach. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton, in an interview with Bloomberg Radio about his memoir on his time in the Trump White House, says the president compromised U.S. interests during meetings with China's leader Xi Jinping by asking his counterpart to buy U.S. farm goods.